Welcome to Chinese Novel Audiobook. Chapter 21, Konoha Year 60, Luxurious Status Panel. Time flies, and years pass by like a shuttle. In the blink of an eye, childhood has come to an end. Late March of Konoha Year 60. The most special generation of new students has finally ushered in their graduation season. Izayoi-kun, wake up, there's a graduation exam today. Izayoi rarely slept in today. Immersed in his dreams, he was pulled back to reality by a gentle female voice. The owner of that voice was right next to Izayoi, but did not startle Izayoi awake, which shows Izayoi's trust in her, without the slightest defensiveness. Opening his eyes, in the hazy vision, the outline of the girl gradually became clear. A delicate little face that has shed its childishness came into Izayoi's eyes. The long black hair, which had been deliberately grown out since 6 years ago, draped over her shoulders and waist like silk, and the skin exposed outside the white windbreaker and black fishnet lining was as white as snow. Unlike the other members of the Hyuga clan, her Byakugan eyes had a faint layer of light purple, making her beautiful eyes as crystal clear as jewels. The corners of her cherry-like lips were slightly raised, with a faint smile, her hands behind her back, looking down at the newly awakened Izayoi. Looking at Hinata for a few seconds, Izayoi was a little dazed, as if that cute little face full of baby fat was still like yesterday. But soon, his gaze suddenly moved downwards, and a mischievous smile appeared on his face. "Hinata, have you grown bigger again?" "Ah!" Hinata exclaimed suddenly, only to realize how indecent her posture was. She hurriedly pulled the zipper of her windbreaker to the top, her little face flushed as she turned around, her voice trembling slightly. "Izayoi-kun, hurry up and wash up, I've brought you food." After saying that, the girl hurried out of the room. Izayoi, who was used to teasing his childhood sweetheart, got up and stretched, then went to the room's private bathroom to wash up. While brushing his teeth, Izayoi looked at himself in the mirror. 6 years have passed, and the black-haired, blue-eyed child with a face full of baby fat has also shed his childishness. His features are as sharp as if they were carved, delicate and handsome. The short black hair that just covered his ears was slightly fluffy because he had just woken up. The blue eyes were like a deep ocean, sparkling in the light. But the next second, these blue eyes, the same color as Naruto Uzumaki's, but a little deeper than his, suddenly turned white like Hinata's. Under the light, it also had a faint layer of light purple. However, Izayoi's temples did not have bulging veins. In the past, every time Izayoi activated his Byakugan, his temples would bulge with veins. But since the beginning of the year, there has been no such characteristic. Izayoi's eyes narrowed slightly, and then a light screen that only he could see, which even the mirror could not reflect, appeared in front of him out of thin air. Host: Izayoi. Talent perks: Otsutsuki Bloodline Red, Seijai Red, Prince of the Byakugan Red, 6 Paths Potential Red, Bloodline Limit Byakugan Gold, Chakra Control Gold, Uzumaki Bloodline Purple Plus, All Attribute Constitution Purple Plus, Medical Genius Blue Plus. Points: 12,391. 6 years into the Ninja Academy, Izayoi's status panel had become even more luxurious. In addition to the initial Otsutsuki Bloodline, he had gained 3 new red perks. These were the Seijai Red from Sasuke Uchiha, the Prince of the Byakugan Red that had appeared from Hinata 2 years ago and automatically renamed itself after fusion, and finally, the 6 Paths Potential Red that he had sublimated himself. While others only had ninja aptitude, or didn't even have a single talent perk, Izayoi possessed 4 of the highest level red perks known so far. Even Naruto Uzumaki, the child of destiny with Asura Chakra, half of the 9 tails, and the Uzumaki bloodline, was far inferior to him. However, if you looked closely at this status panel, you would notice that almost 5 full years had passed since Izayoi fused with the Seijai Red. But in his perk column, he still hadn't unlocked Bloodline Limit Sharingan Purple, nor did he have Uchiha Bloodline Purple. The reason, of course, was Bloodline Limit Byakugan Gold. At the end of June in Konoha Year 58, Izayoi received a late birthday gift, finally extracting a red perk from Hinata. After fusion, the name of the perk changed, and in the nearly 2 years that followed, the amount of chakra in Izayoi's body changed almost every month. He didn't know how astonishing the amount of chakra in a sage body was, but Izayoi was very sure that if Naruto Uzumaki didn't have half of the 9 tails and wasn't malnourished, then his chakra reserves would definitely be far inferior to his own, just based on his sage body. The vast, sea-like amount of chakra naturally also included yin release chakra. If Izayoi's yin release chakra were converted into numerical values, his yin release chakra would have long reached the level to awaken the Sharingan, or even evolve into the Mangekyo Sharingan. However, he had not awakened the Sharingan. The yin release chakra secreted from his brain was all absorbed by the Byakugan, making it impossible to gather in the eyeballs and create new eye techniques. However, the level of the Byakugan, which absorbed this yin release chakra, quietly changed from purple to gold in Konoha year 59. Since fusing with the prince of the Byakugan red, the Byakugan's long-range vision had also changed every so often. Now, the Byakugan's long-range vision had reached an astonishing 80 kilometers. Moreover, it was a 360-degree all-round far sight and perspective, a range even more terrifying than the Kagura mind's eye of the Uzumaki clan. Without a doubt, Izayoi's sensing technique had reached the strongest in this era. Almost a year had passed since the Byakugan was upgraded. Soon, Izayoi rinsed his mouth and spat out the foamy water, wiped his mouth with a handkerchief, and couldn't help but raise his hand to touch the corner of his right eye, muttering as he looked at the Byakugan with a hint of light purple in the mirror, "I have a feeling that the first stirring is coming soon." The current Izayoi's configuration was undoubtedly far above Toneri Otsutsuki. At the age of 19, the other party's potential had already been realized, and the Otsutsuki bloodline, like the sage body, had been developed to a very high level. That was why he was able to awaken the ultimate eye technique Tenseigen in a matter of days. But right now, neither Izayoi nor Toneri Otsutsuki have had their potential realized. Even if they were to transplant Hinata or Hanabi's Byakugan, they wouldn't be able to evolve into the Tenseigen in a matter of days like in the movie. However, if they were to transplant the Byakugan at the same time, Izayoi's speed in awakening the Tenseigen would definitely be far greater than Toneri Otsutsuki's. The Sage Eye, red, is Izayoi's confidence. Simultaneously possessing the Sage Eye and the Byakugan, Izayoi is essentially running two accelerated hacks. At 12 years old, there is a possibility of awakening the ultimate eye technique. This is even more outrageous than Itachi Uchiha awakening the Mangekyo Sharingan at 11 years old. Chapter 22, Graduation Exam. Didn't I say yesterday that the exam today wouldn't take long, so you didn't need to bring me food? Izayoi deactivated his Byakugan and came out of his room. At a glance, he saw Hinata already sitting at the dining table, with several bento boxes in front of her. Izayoi said this, but he sat down without any hesitation, eating the breakfast Hinata had carefully prepared. "I didn't want to make it, but I forgot to remind Hanabi yesterday." Hinata placed her hands on the table, explaining with a smile, "Hanabi woke up even earlier than me today and specially made an exam bento for you." "I see, Hanabi is thoughtful." Izayoi slightly understood, and then in one of the bento boxes, he saw a seaweed rice ball with, "Exam success, specially made with radish silk," and he immediately felt his appetite improve. These past few years, he hadn't spoiled his little sister-in-law for nothing. "You eat too, I can't eat this much by myself," Izayoi said as he ate. "No need, I already ate at home." Hinata shook her head, then got up and walked to the refrigerator. After opening the refrigerator, she took out a bottle of milk and poured a glass for both Izayoi and herself. From waking Izayoi up to pouring the milk, Hinata seemed so natural, without any sense of unfamiliarity, as if this were her home. And in fact, it was indeed so. Izayoi and Hinata hadn't gone to their old meeting place for several years. Although Izayoi had never entered the Hyuga clan, Hinata and Hanabi had already treated his home as their second home. Both Hinata and Hanabi had a key to Izayoi's house. Whenever they had time, they would come to Izayoi's house to play. The milk and ingredients in the refrigerator were all bought by Hinata and Hanabi. Even the cleaning of the house was either done by Hinata or by the three of them together. Whether it was Izayoi or Hinata, they had become accustomed to this kind of interaction. After finishing breakfast and washing the dishes, Izayoi and Hinata walked out of the house together, heading towards the Ninja Academy. The combination of a handsome man and a beautiful woman attracted a lot of attention on the road. 6 years had passed, and besides becoming a handsome young man, Izayoi's height had also grown to 1.63 meters. This height naturally wasn't much in Cloud Village, where there were white and black people everywhere. But in Konoha, where the average height of people of the same age was only about 1.5 meters, Izayoi, who was 1.63 meters tall, was a standout in his class and grade. The same was true for Hinata next to him. Izayoi had long forgotten what Hinata's height was in the original story. But what was certain was that the Hinata in the original story, whether in height or figure, was not as good as the current Hinata. Possessing the Big Eater trait, Hinata has never lacked nutrition since childhood, and with her astonishing amount of exercise, her height has already reached 1.55 meters, surpassing girls of the same age by 6 or 7 centimeters. In just a few more centimeters, she'll be as tall as she was in the original Shippuden. This height has also led to a surge in Hinata's assets, which were already somewhat developed at the age of 12 in the original story. Even wearing a loose white windbreaker, it's hard to conceal her proud figure. If she were to pull down the zipper, revealing the tight-fitting black fishnet lining, and lean forward, the sight would surely be breathtaking. It was precisely this that stole Izayoi's gaze the second he woke up. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart more than once. This is the beauty of the anime world. Only in the world of anime could there exist such an extreme loli with such a figure at this age. Izayoi-kun, Hinata, good morning. Good morning, Minako. You two are still inseparable, are you really not a couple? Today is March 21st, and the students from 1st to 5th grade completed their end-of-year exams yesterday. The graduation exam for 6th grade students is one day later. So upon arriving at school, the campus was much quieter than usual. The figures seen were all 6th grade students. At the entrance, many parents were already standing, having rarely brought their children to school today, and waiting outside for the results. 6 years of effort, whether their children can escape mediocrity and become a ninja, depends on today. Of course, the parents waiting at the entrance are all ordinary people or civilian ninjas. None of the ninja clan disciples had parents come. They are only here today to go through the motions. The ninja forehead protector is already in their grasp. Even if they fail the graduation exam, those with clan secret technique can use their privileges to join a department and become special ninjas. The newest novels are first released at Dingdian Novel Network. On the way to the classroom, Izayoi and Hinata encountered several classmates, both male and female, who greeted them enthusiastically. Those with closer relationships even teased Izayoi and Hinata's relationship. To this, Izayoi simply smiled without saying a word. Hinata lowered her head slightly, her cheeks a little flushed. Also a popular figure at the school, Izayoi, as the top student, is far less popular and welcomed than Sasuke Uchiha. The reason, of course, is Hinata beside him. The two, who have been desk mates since the 1st grade, are inseparable every day. At first, some girls didn't realize the relationship between the two and often surrounded Izayoi. However, each invitation was rejected by Izayoi, and after discovering that Izayoi's attitude towards Hinata was different from his attitude towards them, they gradually stopped harassing Izayoi. Of course, if Hinata were just an ordinary girl, those girls would definitely feel jealous and even want to bully Hinata. However, Hinata is not only the young lady of a wealthy ninja clan, but also consistently ranks in the top 3 in terms of grades. With her pressure point strike, she has become the great demon king of taijutsu sparring. The students are not afraid of being punched and kicked, but are afraid of a certain pressure point being poked, and then a burst of severe pain or paralysis sweeps through their bodies. That feeling is even more uncomfortable than taking a punch. Most of the boys and girls in the class have tasted the pressure point strike. Those girls naturally dare not provoke Hinata. Moreover, besides Izayoi, there is also a Sasuke Uchiha in the class, so they have a second choice. Gradually, Izayoi's surroundings became quiet. With Hinata as a shield, he no longer needs to think of excuses to reject his classmates, invitations every day, and occasionally has to take some time to deal with them. Arriving at the classroom, many students have already arrived. Some students are whispering to each other, not knowing what they are talking about. Some students are sitting in their seats, their faces tense and their fists clenched, showing how nervous they are. Even Naruto Uzumaki, who had scribbled on the Hokage rock yesterday, leading to the whole class being spot-checked on the transformation technique, is sitting quietly today, which is a rare sight. After Izayoi and Hinata sat down in their seats, they also began to whisper to each other. Looking at the top student in the second seat whispering to each other, not taking the graduation exam seriously at all, a girl sitting next to Hinata was filled with envy. Top students are confident. Unlike her, she has been feeling nervous since yesterday and couldn't even sleep well at night. Chapter 23, Sasuke, who was fleeced clean. Ring ring ring. Izayoi and Hinata had only whispered to each other for a short while when the class bell rang. The entire classroom instantly fell silent. This was a very rare sight on normal days. The graduation exam topic is shadow clone technique. The test room is at the end of the right corridor. The students whose names are called will come out. Not long after the bell rang, Haruka Yumino's figure appeared at the classroom door. He didn't walk up to the podium, but instead gave instructions at the door and left. Soon, a chunin wearing a green vest appeared at the door, holding a list and began calling names. Minako. One by one, names were called out by the chunin teacher every minute or two. The students whose names were called either got up nervously or confidently, and after leaving the classroom, they never returned. Hinata was one of them. Izayoi. Only a few minutes after Hinata left, Izayoi heard his name. Getting up and walking out of the classroom, Izayoi arrived at the test room at the end of the corridor. Pushing the door open, Haruka Yumino and the second class's homeroom teacher, Mizuki, immediately came into Izayoi's view. They were sitting at a long table. Seeing Izayoi enter, Haruka Yumino immediately showed a gentle smile on his face and said, "Izayoi, let's begin." Yes. Izayoi nodded, quickly formed hand seals, and softly shouted, "Shadow clone technique." Poof. Two sounds like balloons bursting overlapped. Two puffs of white smoke appeared out of thin air on Izayoi's left and right sides. When the white smoke dissipated, two illusionary shadow clones that looked exactly like Izayoi, whether in appearance, height, or even the smallest details of their clothes, appeared next to Izayoi. Looking up and down at these two illusionary shadow clones, Haruka Yumino and Mizuki exchanged a glance, then took out a genin forehead protector, stood up, and smiled. "Your shadow clones are perfect. Congratulations on passing the graduation exam. From now on, you are a genin." "Thank you, Teacher Haruka, and Teacher Mizuki." Izayoi walked over, accepted the genin forehead protector handed over by Haruka Yumino with both hands, and then bowed slightly to the two of them. Haruka Yumino instructed, "You don't need to go back to the classroom now, and don't leave the school yet. Go to the training grounds of our class and wait for the others to complete the graduation exam. Afterwards, I will take you to take profile photos." "Yes." Izayoi nodded, then turned and left the test room. Just after walking out of the teaching building, Izayoi's first sight was Hinata waiting for him outside. They smiled at each other and walked towards the playground. There were already a dozen or so classmates waiting for them at the playground. "Yo, Izayoi, Hinata, you're here too. The graduation exam is obviously no problem for you guys. Should we celebrate after taking our profile pictures?" Let's skip it. I want to celebrate with my family. They're waiting for me outside." "That's true, let's get together another time then. How many people in our class do you think will pass the graduation exam?" "At least 20, right? After all, we're class 1. Anyway, that Naruto guy is definitely done for." As soon as Izayoi and Hinata arrived, many classmates gathered around and started chatting with Izayoi. Izayoi also smiled and joined in. Just then, a figure walked over. "Izayoi, want to spar later?" It was Sasuke Uchiha, challenging him to a fight right away. Seeing Sasuke Uchiha, the third-ranked student who occasionally snatched the second rank, come over, the other students tactfully walked away. Looking at Sasuke Uchiha's face full of fighting spirit, Izayoi smiled and shook his head. "I won't fight for now. According to the information I've gathered, genin will form a team of 3, and then follow their respective jonin instructors to train. Now you and I both know each other's strength. No matter how many times we fight, the result will be the same. Why not train with our jonin instructors for a while, and then see each other's growth?" Hearing this, Sasuke Uchiha recalled the scene of being constantly beaten. Sasuke Uchiha's fighting spirit instantly died down, and he nodded. "Okay, then let's spar again in a while." "No problem." Izayoi agreed with a smile. The newest novels are first released here. In these past few years, the reason why Izayoi's points could upgrade chakra control and still have more than 10,000 left was all thanks to Sasuke Uchiha. In the first 2 years, Izayoi fought Sasuke Uchiha almost every week, sometimes twice a week. Apart from only exploding the Seijai red once, Izayoi had exploded several times with things like Shadow Level Aptitude purple, and Uchiha Bloodline purple, as well as Otsutsuki Bloodline blue. Izayoi decomposed all these perk into points. More than 10,000 points were all provided by Sasuke Uchiha. The remaining points were provided by Hinata and other classmates. Among them, Hinata accounted for the majority. Because in the whole class, Izayoi's strength was in a league of his own, Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata's strength were in the first tier, ninja clan children in the second tier, and everyone else in the third tier. Starting from the 3rd grade, apart from Sasuke Uchiha and Hinata, whether it was Ino Yamanaka and other ninja clan children, or other classmates, it was difficult to trigger perks. Even if a perk was occasionally triggered, it was mostly a low-level perk. Fortunately, strength was not measured by the amount of chakra, otherwise, Naruto Uzumaki would be the only one in the whole class, or even the whole school, who could trigger high-level perks. Over the years, Izayoi had already fleeced Sasuke Uchiha clean. Whether it was the perks on him, or the ninjutsu scrolls at home, Izayoi had fleeced them more than once. And in these years, Izayoi had also become friends with Sasuke Uchiha. Having a fight every now and then had become their agreement. Having fought with Izayoi for so many years, Sasuke Uchiha's strength was naturally far beyond the original work. Among the bubbles floating around him, one bubble had already changed. That was the Uchiha Bloodline Purple, which had become Bloodline Limit Sharingan Purple. In other words, Sasuke Uchiha had already awakened the Sharingan. To be precise, he could freely activate the Sharingan. The time when he truly awakened the Sharingan was during the night of the clan's extermination. Sasuke Uchiha, who had awakened the Sharingan, was very arrogant. Apart from Izayoi, the only one who could be taken seriously by Sasuke Uchiha was Hinata, who could snatch his second place, and whose taijutsu sparring he couldn't even match. If it was an anything-goes duel, Sasuke Uchiha, who had awakened the Sharingan, had a surge in chakra, and had learned more ninjutsu through Izayoi, would not take Hinata seriously. Two boys and one girl, if Izayoi and Sasuke Uchiha, and Hinata were assigned to the same class, they would definitely be the strongest team among the genin. Whether it was the new generation of Ino Shikacho, or the Gaara siblings from the Sand Village, they were no match for them. But obviously, this was impossible. Whether it was the karmic entanglement between Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki, or their identities, they were destined to be assigned to the same team. In the entire Konoha, no one was more suitable to be their Jonin instructor than Kakashi Hatake. Chapter 24, Izayoi and Father-in-Law's Understanding. Just like Izayoi had said to Hinata, the graduation assessment didn't take long. After chatting for a while, other classmates who had passed the graduation assessment arrived at the playground one after another. Before long, Ruruka Yumino also came over. This meant that the familiar faces not present had failed the graduation assessment and had been eliminated. Upon closer inspection, it was apparent that the only familiar face missing was Naruto Uzumaki. "Alright, everyone, sorry to keep you waiting." Ruruka Yumino, holding a clipboard, smiled and said, "Everyone, please put on your forehead protectors. Now, I'll take you to have your profile pictures taken." "Ruruka-sensei, where should we wear the forehead protector?" One student raised their hand and asked. "Anywhere on your upper body is fine," Ruruka Yumino said. So, the students wore their forehead protectors either on their foreheads, tied around their arms, hung around their necks, or used them as headbands, and so on. Hinata was one of those who hung it around her neck. Izayoi, on the other hand, tied it to his left arm. Once everyone was ready, Ruruka Yumino led them to the rooftop of the comprehensive building. A photographer was already waiting there with a standing camera. After queuing up to have their profile pictures taken, the students couldn't wait to leave the comprehensive building, either strolling leisurely or rushing towards the school gate. At the school gate, parents were already gathered. Some parents were comforting their eliminated children, while others were looking at the school with anticipation. They all knew that those who hadn't come out yet were the genin who had passed the graduation assessment. With the appearance of the students, the school gate immediately became lively. But this lively scene hurt some orphans who had no parents. They either watched this scene with envy or ran out of the school without daring to look. Sasuke Uchiha was both the former and the latter. After taking one envious glance, he disappeared like a shadow. Izayoi didn't belong to either category. Because Oni-chan, Oni-chan, here. At the school gate, a girl's voice was particularly loud. Hanabi, wearing a yellow-brown kimono with flame patterns on the skirt, was waving her little hand towards Izayoi and Hinata. Seeing this, Izayoi's lips curled up slightly, and Hinata also smiled faintly. Before they even reached the school gate, Izayoi bent his knees and squatted down, hugging Hanabi who was rushing towards him. Oni-chan, Oni-chan, I'm here to pick you up." Hanabi hugged Izayoi's neck with both hands, noticing the forehead protector on his arm immediately, and asked curiously, "Oni-chan, is this the genin forehead protector?" "Yeah, here, you can play with it." Izayoi nodded, took off the forehead protector and handed it to Hanabi, then picked Hanabi up, and smiled at Hinata. Then the three of them left the school together. A few years have passed, and Hanabi, who is now 7 years old, has also undergone considerable changes. In the original story, Hanabi at this age still had shoulder-length short hair. However, seeing her sister growing her hair long, she also deliberately kept her hair long. Now her hair is as long as it was in the movie, reaching her waist, and the two strands of bangs are tied into braids. When fighting and training, she either has long straight black hair or ties it into a single ponytail. Coupled with her firm eyes and serious expression, she already has some of the heroic appearance from Boruto. Perhaps because of precociousness, Hanabi's development is much faster than Hinata's. She will grow to 1.7 meters in the future, but now she has already grown to 1.32 meters, only a little over a head shorter than Izayoi. Moreover, Hinata at this age still has a baby face. But Hanabi's small face has already shed a lot of baby fat and is already in the shape of a melon seed face. Hanabi imitated Hinata, hanging the genin forehead protector around her neck, and smiled at Izayoi. Oni-chan, to celebrate you and Oni-chan becoming genin, let's eat hot pot today. It's clearly because Hanabi you want to eat it yourself. Hinata stretched out her slender, jade-like index finger and gently tapped Hanabi's forehead. Hee. Hanabi stuck out her tongue embarrassedly and said, who told father to not allow us to eat this kind of thing, but Hanabi just wants to eat hot pot today. Izayoi was charmed by Hanabi's cute appearance, and immediately said, okay, then let's eat hot pot today. Great. Hanabi cheered for a while, and then, pushed her luck, and said, Oni-chan, I also want a piggyback ride. No. Hinata immediately pouted and scolded, Hanabi, you're so tall now, you can't do that kind of thing anymore. I'm only 7 years old this year, what does it matter? The newest novels are first published at. Hanabi made a face at Hinata, and then acted coquettishly towards Izayoi, Oni-chan, please. No problem. Izayoi immediately freed up a hand and made a strongman pose, saying, don't say you're 7 years old. Even if Hanabi is as tall as Oni-chan, I can still give you a piggyback ride. As expected of Oni-chan, Hanabi immediately put on an adoring expression, then got down from Izayoi's embrace and straddled his shoulders from behind. Seriously. Watching Izayoi walk ahead, directed by Hanabi towards the market, Hinata first sighed helplessly, then followed with an indulgent smile. Whoosh. Not long after the three of them left, a figure suddenly appeared out of nowhere in their place. Upon closer inspection, it was a Hyuga clansman wearing a green vest, with the same eyes as Hinata and Hanabi. This person was Hanabi's guard. Hinata always had guards when she went out, so how could Hanabi not have one? It's just that for some reason, he didn't protect Hanabi closely, but silently guarded her in the dark. Except for Hanabi, both Izayoi and Hinata knew of the guard's existence. In the past 6 years, although Izayoi had not yet met Hiyashi Hyuga, he had a tacit understanding with this future father-in-law. The former was responsible for gently nurturing Hinata and Hanabi, allowing Hinata and Hanabi, who had lost their mother, to grow up in his love and doting. The latter was strict, making them bear the glory of the prominent family. Living under high pressure at home, Hinata and Hanabi naturally relied heavily on Izayoi. Only in front of Izayoi would Hanabi be as lively as a child of her age, full of playfulness and mischief. In front of Hiyashi Hyuga, she was just like in the original work, a very precocious little adult. The same was true for Hinata. Going to the market to buy ingredients for hot pot, as well as Hanabi's favorite glutinous rice balls and bananas, milk, and Hinata's favorite cinnamon rolls, Izayoi took the two girls home to have hot pot. After eating and drinking their fill, the three of them sat on a long sofa, chatting while digesting. Sitting next to Izayoi, finally no longer reserved, Hinata, with her head resting on his shoulder, suddenly said, Izayoi-kun, it seems like Naruto-kun is the only one in our class who hasn't graduated. Yeah. Izayoi, who was playing with Hanabi's braided bangs, nodded. When the two of them walked to the school gate, they noticed Naruto Uzumaki sitting on the swing at first glance. Naruto-kun's chakra is so powerful, why can't he even do a clone technique? Hinata asked, puzzled. Maybe his chakra control is very average. Izayoi casually brushed it off, his academic performance is so poor, his shuriken throwing hasn't improved much, and he's always the first to be eliminated in every survival exercise. The only bright spot is taijutsu sparring. Maybe failing is a good thing. Yeah. Recalling Naruto Uzumaki's performance over the past 6 years, Hinata nodded in agreement. But neither she nor Hanabi, who was leaning in Izayoi's arms, squinting as if she was about to fall asleep, noticed that Izayoi had a subtle arc at the corner of his mouth when he was being perfunctory. Chapter 25, Team Assignments, Father-in-Law Taking Action. Naruto Uzumaki sat on the swing, his lonely figure looking very pitiful. But Izayoi didn't pity him at all. Because only Izayoi knew that this guy was about to get a cheat. Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha, these two rivals, were just like the reincarnated chakra within them, representing the ultimate yin and yang. Their fates were also opposite. For 6 years in the shinobi school, Sasuke Uchiha was one of the prominent figures. If it weren't for Izayoi, he would have been the top student. In the original story, these few years were also Sasuke Uchiha's most glorious time. But after graduation, he began to continuously suffer setbacks. On the other hand, Naruto Uzumaki, who had always been at the bottom, began his journey of counterattack and getting cheats. In just a few months, he surpassed the top student from being at the bottom. Naruto Uzumaki looks pitiful now, but after dark, he will officially get his cheat, obtaining one of the divine skills most suitable for a sage body and the Nine Tails Jinchuriki. Multiple Shadow Clone Technique. This is a forbidden technique that even Izayoi is very envious of, and the more chakra he has, the more he wants to obtain it. In the Fourth Shinobi World War of the original story, Naruto Uzumaki's shadow clone used the multiple shadow clone technique, each with a Rasengan in hand, and resisted Madara Uchiha's wood release, advent of a world of flowering trees. Even the lowest level 5 elements release, when used by hundreds or thousands of shadow clones, would have the effect of a natural disaster. If Naruto Uzumaki had mastered a wind release, great breakthrough during the Chunin exams, then he wouldn't have needed to fart to defeat Kiba in Izuka. A set of multiple shadow clone technique plus wind release, great breakthrough combination technique could instantly kill most of the examinees. Naruto Uzumaki will be weakened and suppressed, but Izayoi will not. If he obtains the multiple shadow clone technique, his strength will definitely undergo a qualitative change. Thinking of this, Izayoi's 2 fingers, which were stroking Hanabi's hair, paused slightly. A bold idea arose in his mind. Perhaps, he can get this forbidden technique tonight. If the Byakugan had not been upgraded to the gold level, Izayoi would never have dared to have such an idea. After all, only he knew that the multiple shadow clone technique was actually prepared by Hiruzen Sarutobi specifically for Naruto Uzumaki. Opening the sealing scroll, the first forbidden technique is the multiple shadow clone technique, and the sealing scroll, which was placed in the most conspicuous place to prevent Naruto Uzumaki from not finding it, is also very problematic. If Izayoi dares to target the sealing scroll, or even appear in that forest at night, he will be targeted by Hiruzen Sarutobi. Then waiting for him will be the Yamanaka clan's mind-reading technique. However, Izayoi doesn't need to get close to Naruto Uzumaki at all, nor does he need to appear in that forest, to have the ability to obtain the multiple shadow clone technique. His Byakugan's farsight has reached a distance of 80 kilometers. The entire Konoha is within his coverage. As long as he is prepared, he can completely copy down the cultivation method of the multiple shadow clone technique the moment Naruto Uzumaki opens the sealing scroll. Thinking of this, Izayoi immediately made a decision. Izayoi-kun, do you think we'll be assigned to the same squad in the team assignments the day after tomorrow? More than half an hour passed. Hanabi had fallen asleep in Izayoi's arms. After carrying Hanabi to bed in the room, Izayoi returned to the sofa. Immediately, he reached out and put his arm around Hinata's fragrant shoulder. Hinata leaned into Izayoi's arms, asking with anticipation in her eyes. The chances are small, but it's not impossible. Izayoi twirled Hinata's hair with 2 fingers, and slowly said, the team assignments are definitely based on the balance of strength. You and I have consistently been in the top 3 of our grade for years, so the chances of us being assigned to the same team are very small. But our inseparable relationship over the past few years has not only been noticed by our classmates but also by our teachers. If the team assignments are up to the teachers, they might consider our tacit understanding and assign us to the same squad. Hinata made a praying gesture with her hands, wishing, I hope Izayoi-kun and I can be assigned to the same squad. Izayoi couldn't help but smile, and the fingers that were stroking her hair couldn't help but pinch Hinata's chin, and then pinch her small face. He didn't want to discourage Hinata, but the chances of the 2 of them being assigned to the same team were actually close to 0. The one assigning the teams was Hiruzen Sarutobi, and in the original story, only Sakura Haruno, the lucky girl who was liked by Naruto Uzumaki, was fortunate enough to enter the circle of ninja clan children. The remaining 8 of the Konoha 12, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha were on one team, the new generation of Ino Shika-cho were on one team, and the Inuzuka clan, the Hyuga clan, and the Aburame clan were on one team. In this class, there were no teams with both ninja clan children and civilians. Similarly, these teams composed of ninja clan children would definitely be recognized by the Jonin instructors. The newest novels are first released at. The remaining squads composed of civilian ninjas had extremely high elimination rates. If the team assignments weren't according to tradition, Izayoi, as the top student, could just squeeze out Sakura Haruno. But Hiruzen Sarutobi obviously couldn't break tradition, and Izayoi and Sasuke Uchiha were friends. What if the two of them isolated Naruto Uzumaki? With two boys and one girl together, if the two boys have a conflict, there is still a girl to mediate or take sides. If three boys have a conflict, it would be a powder keg. Considering that the new generation of Ino Shikacho couldn't be split up. Team 7, due to its special nature, would definitely be the same as in the original story. The only team that Izayoi could squeeze into was Team 8. If Izayoi really squeezed in, then Hiruzen Sarutobi would be offending the Aburame clan or the Inuzuka clan. If Kiba Inuzuka and Shino Aburame were just ordinary members, then it wouldn't matter. After all, Izayoi was the top student, proving his value. But precisely because of that, they are all sons of clan leaders, heirs to their respective shinobi clans. Arranging for the heirs of shinobi clans to be placed in ordinary squads, taught by ordinary jonin instructors, what if they encounter danger during missions? The Inuzuka clan and the Aburame clan, the former is not only a sensory and combat shinobi clan, but also provides a large number of shinobi with ninja dogs as summoning beasts. The latter is an infamous insect user clan in the shinobi world, with various insects that make people tremble with fear. Izayoi wasn't sure if Hiruzen Sarutobi had the courage to do that. Therefore, this was an extremely small probability. However, Izayoi didn't know that it wasn't just Hinata who hoped to be assigned to the same squad as him, but even Hiyashi Hyuga hoped Hinata would be assigned to the same squad as him. His future father-in-law had already taken action quietly. At dusk, Hiruzen Sarutobi placed a specially made sealing scroll on the desk in the Hokage's office, and then left work to go home. Not long after he returned home, a middle-aged man wearing a white robe, with long hair, and a pair of byakugan, personally came to visit. At the same time, Mizuki also approached Naruto Uzumaki. Just after dark, a blonde-haired boy wearing an orange jacket suit and dark green goggles openly infiltrated the Hokage's office and stole the sealing scroll placed on the desk. Before long, a large number of figures wearing green vests were flying around on the rooftops of the central street. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 26, Multiple Shadow Clone Technique Acquired. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The sound of air being torn apart echoed continuously in the sky above the central street. Watching the figures that were flitting past, both ninjas and civilians realized that something big was happening tonight. However, the alarm didn't sound, and the fleeting figures didn't organize them to go to the shelter, so the villagers were relieved. The matter had nothing to do with them, and there was no danger. Izayoi sat on the single sofa on the balcony, drinking juice while admiring the starry sky tonight. Some figures flying over the roof of his house didn't attract his attention either. After an unknown amount of time, until there were no more afterimages of people running on the roofs in the central street, and there were fewer and fewer pedestrians on the street. As if he was tired of watching, Izayoi got up and went back to the house. Before long, the lights in the living room went out. After taking a shower, Izayoi came out wearing pajamas, a faint smile on his handsome face. Multiple shadow clone technique, acquired. No one knew that inside a man-made cave in a certain waterfall area, there were several figures with different appearances, using the invisibility technique to merge with the mountain wall, using a farsight ability with a coverage area of up to 80 kilometers, constantly staring at Naruto Uzumaki, who was wearing an orange jacket suit. From the moment he walked out of the Hokage building, every move was under the gaze of these figures. With powerful farsight and perspective abilities, neither the nine tails inside Naruto Uzumaki's body, nor Hiruzen Sarutobi, who had been watching Naruto Uzumaki with the crystal ball telepathy, noticed anything. When Naruto Uzumaki opened the sealing scroll, these figures also opened blank scrolls, and worked together to write down the cultivation method of the multiple shadow clone technique. These figures were none other than Izayoi's shadow clones using the transformation technique. After copying down the cultivation method of the multiple shadow clone technique and hiding it, the shadow clones eliminated all traces and smells, and disbanded on the spot. Izayoi, who received the feedback, didn't immediately retrieve the cultivation scroll of the multiple shadow clone technique. Now that he had the cultivation method, there was no need to rush. Lying on the bed, Izayoi was also curious about the team assignments the day after tomorrow. It was still that same sentence. He was very sure that his and Hinata's cultivation, as well as the battle with Sasuke Uchiha, had been spied on by Hiruzen Sarutobi. Before graduating, he had already mastered tree climbing and water walking, which were not taught in the ninja school, as well as low-level wind release and fire release, and the B-rank shadow clone technique. Whether it was taijutsu sparring or unrestricted duels, he crushed the Hyuga clan's main family's young lady, as well as the Uchiha survivor who had awakened the Sharingan. Such a commoner genius, even if he couldn't compare to Minato Namikaze, who had been accepted as a disciple by Jiraiya at the age of 12 and defeated the Cloud Ninja, and Kakashi Hatake, who had already become a Jonin and developed the A-rank lightning release, Chidori, he was second only to them. After all, they all lived in times of war, while Izayoi was a product of a peaceful era. Standing out from the crowd in such a special class of new generation, even if Hiruzen Sarutobi was unwilling to offend those ninja clans, he wouldn't put him in the same group as other ordinary students, and arrange an ordinary guiding Jonin to be his teacher, right? If this really happened, it would mean that Hiruzen Sarutobi was unwilling to invest in him. After that, his attention to him would also decrease sharply, and Izayoi could secretly do some small things. Thinking of this, Izayoi didn't care about the team assignment results anymore, and closed his eyes to sleep. The next day, Izayoi woke up and didn't see Hinata or Hanabi come over, so he went to retrieve the multiple shadow clone technique first. Considering Hiruzen Sarutobi's crystal ball telepathy, which was a god's eye view of peeping, Izayoi simply lay down to read the scroll. This way, even if he couldn't detect the crystal ball telepathy, Izayoi wouldn't be afraid of Hiruzen Sarutobi's peeping. Without being able to simplify the hand seals and chakra mobilization of the multiple shadow clone technique are different from the shadow clone technique. The former has fewer hand seals than the latter, but the chakra mobilized is very astonishing. People without a huge amount of chakra using this technique are likely to injure themselves, or even endanger their lives, so this technique cannot be cultivated by those who do not have a huge amount of chakra. Everyone says Kakashi Hatake is the unit of measurement, but he was able to use the multiple shadow clone technique when he was 5 or 6 years old. Izayoi thought to himself, even though the Sharingan is consuming chakra all the time, and he has been dragged down for more than 10 years, Kakashi Hatake's chakra level is still at the elite Jonin level. After losing the Sharingan, in just a few years, his chakra level recovered to the point where he could cast the earth release, earth flow wall that surrounds Konoha and carves dog heads on it. If he hadn't been dragged down by the Sharingan, his current chakra level would definitely not be inferior to Kisame Hoshigaki. Not counting those few Jinchuriki, there are only a few people in this era who have the ability to use the multiple shadow clone technique. Izayoi is one of them. At this moment, Izayoi was extremely grateful that he hadn't acted impulsively at the time and used the newbie gift pack on Naruto Uzumaki. Otherwise, he would only have the advantage of a large amount of chakra now. Even if Sasuke Uchiha's Seijai was revealed, don't even think about awakening the Rinnegan without several years, or even more than 10 years. On the other hand, the Otsutsuki Bloodline Red plus Seijai Red plus Byakugan Prince Red can already feel the fetal movement period coming. In less than 5 minutes, Izayoi put away the scroll. He had already learned the multiple shadow clone technique. Without needing to try, with his current amount of chakra, he only needs to follow the chakra operation on the scroll to create hundreds or thousands of shadow clones. To prevent Hanabi from accidentally seeing this scroll, and then trying to cultivate it out of playfulness, Izayoi did not hide the scroll, but destroyed it. He has already learned the multiple shadow clone technique. If necessary, he can completely write one out, or teach it hand by hand. At noon, seeing that Hinata and Hanabi had not come over, Izayoi, feeling that they might not come today, went out to buy some ninja tools. After all, before carrying out the mission, there is still a real assessment. On the way, Izayoi also saw Naruto Uzumaki being pestered by Konohamaru, and the special Jonin Ebisu secretly following them behind. The dark green goggles on Naruto Uzumaki's forehead have been replaced by a genin forehead protector. Obviously he just took the file photo not long ago. Naruto Uzumaki, who was talking to Konohamaru with his head down, did not notice Izayoi. Izayoi didn't greet him either, just glanced at him and withdrew his gaze, continuing to the ninja tool shop. The newest novels are first published at 69 Shu. When Izayoi returned home, he found 2 more pairs of shoes in the entrance hall. Inside a room on the first floor that had been converted into a dojo, there was a series of sounds like clapping, and like something colliding, crisp and heavy. Walking over to open the door, he saw Hinata and Hanabi, already changed into white training clothes, Byakugan activated, veins bulging on both temples, engaged in a taijutsu sparring. The two girls' hands turned into afterimages, surrounded by blue chakra flames, each collision of the afterimages stirring up considerable airwaves. If one looked closely, they would notice that Hinata wasn't really serious, but was just feeding moves to Hanabi. If she were serious, Hanabi would already be covered in injuries. After all, in Izayoi and Hinata's eyes, Hanabi, who currently only knew pressure point strike, had attack patterns that were too easy to understand. Moreover, her lower body was too weak, full of flaws. Thinking of this, Izayoi felt that he could also find some time to teach Hanabi tree climbing technique and water walking technique in advance. After all, apart from the Byakugan purity being slightly inferior to Hinata, Hanabi was not weaker than Hinata in other aspects, and could completely learn higher level chakra control in advance, just like Hinata did back then. Oni-chan, take this. Just as Izayoi was thinking this, Hanabi's delicate shout suddenly pulled him back to his senses. He saw Hanabi, wearing training clothes, already rushing towards him. The scene of bulging veins and fingertips entwined with blue chakra flames was very intimidating among her peers. However, Izayoi just raised the corner of his mouth slightly, without even putting down the bag he was carrying. He turned into an afterimage, appearing next to Hanabi as if by teleportation. The instep of his bare foot was pressed against Hanabi's stomach. The powerful yet gentle force sent Hanabi's body flying into the air, towards Hinata. Hinata reached out and caught her flying sister. Come on, let's go together. Izayoi threw the bag containing the props into the corner, hooked his fingers at the two girls, with a provocative look on his face. The Hyuga sisters looked at each other, and immediately nodded with serious little faces, then rushed towards Izayoi. Oni-chan, you are too arrogant, you will regret it. Hanabi shouted loudly. Hinata didn't speak, but her slender jade-like fingers contained amazing finger strength and chakra, cutting through the air like arrows. Immediately afterwards, a louder collision than before immediately rang out on the first floor of Izayoi's house. From time to time, there were also sounds of painful groans and screams mixed in. If the soundproofing wasn't good, it might make passers-by think otherwise. However, more than half an hour later, the sound of fighting was replaced by the sound of playfulness. Woo woo woo, it hurts so much, hiss. Oni-chan, I hate you, I want to bite you to death. Didn't you say you'd make me regret it? Where did that momentum from just now go? Don't bite, your injuries have all healed, your sister hasn't been treated yet. I'm going to bite, sister, you bite the other side, let's bite Oni-chan until he cries together. Ha ha ha, the tooth marks will disappear by themselves later, don't lick, it's so itchy. Hee hee, we're going to lick, we want to take revenge on you, Oni-chan. Quote. Chapter 27, Famous Scene. Izayoi-kun, it's time to get up, the team assignments are about to be announced. The next day, Izayoi woke up once again to Hinata's voice. He didn't know when it started, but the usually self-disciplined him had developed a habit of lazing in bed, enjoying the princess's wake-up service every morning. Hinata was also used to waking up early every day, bringing breakfast to wake up Izayoi, and both of them enjoyed it. I was drained of chakra by you guys yesterday, I can't get up. Izayoi didn't get up immediately, but instead stretched out his hands towards Hinata and said coquettishly, Hinata, pull me up. Liar, it's clear that the chakra we absorb isn't even as fast as your recovery speed. Hinata said with a delicate chin, but still reached out to pull Izayoi up. However, just as her small hand grabbed the back of Izayoi's hand, Izayoi grabbed her wrist and pulled hard. Hinata's body fell directly onto Izayoi's body. But her figure, which surpassed her peers, easily resolved the impact, leaving her unharmed as she lay on Izayoi's body. Although she wasn't injured, the sudden attack still made Hinata cry out in surprise. Izayoi felt the sensation in front of him, and suddenly switched positions with Hinata, turning around and pressing her under him, supporting himself with his hands on either side of her head, looking down at the girl who had already turned into the steam princess. Izayoi-kun. After several years, Hinata, whose immunity was already very strong, was now like she had been reset to zero, her eyes darting around, unable to meet Izayoi's gaze at all. Seeing Hinata's long-lost cute appearance, Izayoi felt a strange impulse. But thinking about the other party's age, and the fact that their relationship hadn't completely broken through yet, Izayoi still suppressed this impulse. Just as Izayoi was about to get out of bed, his eyes inadvertently swept over the black fishnet lining, and then, as if recalling something, he finally couldn't help but say his wish in his hometown dialect, "Hinata, I want to grab your boobs." Huh. Hinata, who couldn't understand what Izayoi was saying, couldn't help but tilt her head cutely. In the next second, her face suddenly turned extremely red, and her pale purple Byakugan also turned into swirling, Rinnegan. The value of her emotions was rapidly soaring, about to reach the top and break through the limit. Izayoi quickly got up and got out of bed, and trotted into the ensuite bathroom. And Hinata, as if she had been holding her breath for a long time, gasped for breath, while raising her hand to calm her pounding heart, as well as the slight pain. By the time Izayoi came out of the ensuite bathroom, Hinata was no longer in the room. Izayoi didn't leave the room immediately, but instead opened the closet and took out the combat uniform that he had ordered at the beginning of the year, but had never worn. This combat uniform was a white robe of the same style as Otsutsuki Indra. The only difference was that Izayoi's robe didn't have a wide collar, and there were no black tomo around the neckline. After putting on the white robe and fastening the black belt, Izayoi took out the props he had bought yesterday. They were 2 white wristbands with storage functions. Izayoi put the shuriken and kunai inside and wore them on the wrists of both hands. The sleeves of the white robe were very wide, and unless the enemy had X-ray vision, they couldn't see what Izayoi's palms were doing inside. Fully dressed, Izayoi walked out of the room. Hinata, who had already opened her bento box and was sitting at the dining table as usual waiting for Izayoi, suddenly had her beautiful eyes light up. Her heartbeat, which had only just calmed down, suddenly accelerated again. There was no helping it, the current Izayoi was just too lethal. Black hair and blue eyes, handsome appearance, and a tall and straight figure, now wearing a white one-piece robe, added a touch of noble temperament. Judging by appearance alone, everyone would think that Izayoi was a noble young master from an extraordinary background, rather than a commoner orphan who had no parents since childhood and had never been taught etiquette. At this moment, Hinata suddenly regretted wearing an ordinary white windbreaker and trousers. She should have had a kimono custom-made like her sister. That way, she and Izayoi would be even more well-matched. Thinking of this, Hinata immediately made a decision to ask her sister for advice when she got home. Izayoi was naturally unaware of Hinata's thoughts. After breakfast, the two left home and headed to the ninja academy. Yo. Izayoi, Hinata, good morning. It's so nice, you're still inseparable. I hope you can be in the same team when the team assignments are announced. On the way, Izayoi and Hinata met several classmates who were also heading to school together. The two who were always stuck together were naturally teased. Izayoi remained silent with a smile, while Hinata shyly lowered her head, recalling the ambiguous scene not long ago. Arriving at the classroom, most of the students had arrived. Originally, Naruto Uzumaki was the only one in the class who had not graduated, but as Naruto Uzumaki passed the graduation exam, Class 1 of the 6th grade, everyone passed the graduation exam. Of course, as for how many teams can get the approval of the Jonin instructor, that is unknown. Since they had already graduated, the students did not sit in their seats, but sat together with the people they were closest to and chatted. Izayoi and Hinata also found a place to sit down at random. Before the two could start whispering sweet nothings, a figure that attracted much attention sat next to Izayoi. Glancing at this figure, Izayoi greeted him with a smile. Morning, Sasuke. Morning. Sasuke Uchiha nodded, looking slightly expectant. I hope we can be assigned to the same team when the team assignments are announced later. Aside from Naruto Uzumaki, who occasionally resonated with him, Izayoi and Hinata were the only two in the entire grade that Sasuke Uchiha took seriously. If I could be assigned to the same squad as them, I could challenge them often and improve my strength. To this, Izayoi smiled and shook his head. I'd also like to be assigned to the same squad as you and Hinata, but you should know that the top 3 in the grade can't be in the same group. Otherwise, there's no need for the other squads to participate in the Chunin exams. That's true. Sasuke Uchiha was slightly regretful, feeling that Izayoi made a lot of sense. Just as he was resting his chin on his hands, waiting for the team assignments to begin, a figure had already squatted down in front of him at some point. Looking at the golden-haired fox face in front of him, and those eyes that were the same color as Izayoi's but narrowed into slits, Sasuke Uchiha felt inexplicably annoyed, and an expression of disgust couldn't help but appear on his expressionless face. Taking this scene into his eyes, Izayoi's lips couldn't help but curl up, as if he had remembered something. As expected, Naruto, that guy, is really impolite. That's right, Sasuke-kun, quickly take care of him. Quote. Looking at Naruto Uzumaki, who was provoking Sasuke Uchiha, the group of girls not far away couldn't wait to rush over and beat Naruto Uzumaki to the ground. But seeing Izayoi and Hinata next to Sasuke Uchiha, they didn't dare to step forward, as if they were intimidated by this combination. Just then, the male student in front of Sasuke Uchiha seemed to be chatting excitedly, and his elbow suddenly nudged backward, but he didn't notice that Naruto Uzumaki was squatting on the desk behind him. Naruto Uzumaki's butt was nudged by the elbow, and his body leaned forward involuntarily. Looking at the face that was magnified in his eyes, his narrowed eyes suddenly widened like bells. The same was true for Sasuke Uchiha. Under the stunned gaze of the girls, whose bodies turned petrified, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha stuck together, staging the famous scene, the kiss of the century. Whoa! At this moment, Izayoi almost couldn't help but whistle, regretting very much that he didn't go by a camera. Hinata covered her small mouth with both hands, her small face flushed as she looked at Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha. Such a scene was really too shocking. A few seconds later, Naruto Uzumaki and Sasuke Uchiha seemed to react, and quickly broke free, turning their heads to dry heave. Sasuke Uchiha dry heaved while saying murderously, "Dead last, I must kill you." However, he didn't need to do it himself, as a shadow covered him. The support group, led by Sakura Haruno, who had witnessed their idol's first kiss being snatched away, directly ignored the pressure from Izayoi and Hinata, pushed away the male student in front of Sasuke Uchiha, and then dragged Naruto Uzumaki off the desk and beat him up in front of the podium. "Ah, have mercy." In the dust and mist, the miserable screams and pleas for mercy of Naruto Uzumaki echoed. Chapter 28, 8th Squad. Alright, everyone, go back to your seats, class assignments are about to begin. The kiss of the century was just an interlude. Uruka Yumino quickly appeared at the classroom door, ending the farce. The girls, still not appeased after the beating, reluctantly returned to their seats. Naruto Uzumaki, his face swollen like a pig, sat behind Izayoi. Next to him was Sakura Haruno, who, unable to sit next to Sasuke Uchiha, had seized the seat in the back. Remember the original website domain name. As Uruka Yumino walked to the podium, the noisy classroom quieted down. Everyone looked at Uruka Yumino with anticipation. Scanning the classroom and seeing that none of the students he had taught for 6 years had been eliminated, Uruka Yumino couldn't help but show a gratified smile. Then, he calmed his emotions and said with a smile, "Congratulations on successfully graduating. From now on, you are all true ninjas." After speaking, Uruka Yumino raised the clipboard in his hand and continued, "However, you are only probationary employees now, still rookies among ninjas. Before you can stand on your own, you need to form a team of 3 and follow experienced Jonin instructors to train. Next, we will begin assigning teams. Team 1. Uruka Yumino didn't waste any time and started calling out names directly. As one name after another came from his mouth, a sighing sound immediately rang out in the classroom. These sighs were all from the girls. Although Izayoi had already been occupied by Hinata, who was in the top 3 of the grade, many girls still secretly loved him and hoped to be on the same team as him. But now, they couldn't be on the same team as Sasuke Uchiha, nor were they assigned to a group with Izayoi, which was simply terrible luck. However, the remaining girls became nervous and excited. Each team had 2 boys and 1 girl, and there were only 10 girls in the class. With each one less, their hope of being assigned to a group with Izayoi and Sasuke Uchiha increased. Team 6. Soon it was Team 6's turn, and Uruka Yumino read out the names of this group: Minako, Sawano Genichi, and Kiba Inuzuka. Hearing this name, a flash of light suddenly appeared in Izayoi's eyes, and the corners of his mouth couldn't help but rise slightly. The result is out. Hiruzen Sarutobi chose to give up on Kiba Inuzuka and invest in Izayoi, the top student, among Kiba Inuzuka, Shino Aburame, and Izayoi. Obviously, Izayoi's achievement of surpassing the major ninja clans and winning the title of top student for consecutive years allowed Hiruzen Sarutobi to see the potential in him to become a pillar and trump card. The Inuzuka clan certainly had amazing connections, but their combat power needed to be coordinated with ninja beasts, making it difficult for elite Jonin-level experts to emerge. Unlike the Aburame clan, which had various strange and powerful insects, just like the Uchiha clan's 3 Tomo Sharingan, they were almost invincible in one-on-one combat. Between these 2 ninja clans, Hiruzen Sarutobi chose to give up on the Inuzuka clan. Only the Inuzuka clan would not have any complaints. After all, Konoha is not lacking in sensory ninja clans. Not to mention the Hyuga clan with their Byakugan, the Aburame clan is also good at scent perception. Moreover, there is a kind of nearly extinct bug, which no member currently possesses, but if needed, they can completely restart its legacy, the scent tracking bug. This bug has a sense of smell 1,000 times stronger than ninja dogs. As long as it smells something with someone's scent, it can accurately locate them even hundreds of miles away, which is very outrageous. In terms of attack, there are also nano-level poisonous bugs that can cultivate elite Jonin, and even cage-level powerhouses are very afraid of them. Although the Inuzuka clan's status is relatively low, they are ultimately one of the ninja clans. Izayoi did not expect that Hiruzen Sarutobi would be so decisive, choosing to invest in him and offend the Inuzuka clan. Little did he know, Hiyashi Hyuga played a big role in this. Back then, Hisashi Hyuga sacrificed himself for the village, and Hiruzen Sarutobi already felt very sorry for the Hyuga clan. Now that Hiyashi Hyuga came to visit, only wanting his daughter to be in the same squad as the top student, Hiruzen Sarutobi certainly couldn't refuse this small request. He originally had the idea of investing in Izayoi, but was just hesitating about how to arrange it. Hiyashi Hyuga's arrival merely helped him make a decision. Team 7, Sakura Haruno, Naruto Uzumaki. Yeah. At this time, Haruka Yumino had already read out Team 7. Hearing that he was in the same squad as Sakura Haruno, Naruto Uzumaki cheered immediately, while Sakura Haruno looked desperate, feeling that her future was bleak. However, the name Haruka Yumino read out next instantly reversed the situation. Sasuke Uchiha. Yeah. Sakura Haruno stood up and raised her hands, cheering. Then, like a victor, she turned her head and gave Ino Yamanaka a smug look. Seeing this scene, Ino Yamanaka and other female classmates gnashed their teeth. 8th Squad, Hinata Hyuga, Shino Aburame, and Izayoi. The newest novels are first published at. Hearing that she and Izayoi were in the same squad, Hinata rarely grabbed Izayoi's arm, and said excitedly, "That's great, Izayoi-kun, we're assigned to the same squad." Yes, it seems we have good luck today. Izayoi, who had already guessed the result, nodded with a smile. This team assignment did make him feel happy. Over the past 6 years, Izayoi had become accustomed to having Hinata by his side. He didn't want to be separated from Hinata either. 10th Squad, Ino Yamanaka, Choji Akamichi, and Shikamaru Nara. After reading the last name, Haruka Yumino put down the clipboard in his hand and gave one last look at the students he had been with for 6 years, instructing, those whose names were called, remember your squad and your teammates' names. A Jonin will come to find you later. Don't leave the classroom during this time. After saying that, Haruka Yumino left the classroom. None of the students bid him farewell, everyone was looking forward to their upcoming ninja careers. Little did they know, there was still a difficult hurdle waiting for them ahead. 3rd Squad, come out. Haruka Yumino had only been gone for a few minutes. A middle-aged man wearing a green vest appeared at the classroom door, his face stern and full of authority, instantly silencing the classroom. The members of the 3rd Squad, as if returning to their first day of school 6 years ago, nervously stood up and followed their supervising Jonin out. 5th Squad, come out, I am your supervising Jonin. 1st Squad, come out. 9th Squad, come out. Quote. One after another, Jonin appeared at the classroom door, each time taking away 3 students. Before long, a large number of seats in the classroom were empty. At this moment, a mature woman who was not wearing a green vest, but rather ordinary clothes, with a fiery figure and long, black, curly hair, appeared at the classroom door. A pair of red eyes scanned the remaining students, her gaze finally landing on Izayoi and Hinata, and then she smiled, 8th Squad, come out, I am your supervising Jonin. After saying that, she turned and left. Taking my leave first, goodbye. Izayoi greeted Sasuke Uchiha and Naruto Uzumaki, and then left the classroom with Hinata. As for Shino Aburame, this top student with extremely low presence, he had long disappeared. Chapter 29, Team Leader. Teacher Kurenai led 8th Squad out of the teaching building, not heading to the playground, but leaving the school and arriving at a training grounds in the wilderness. Such training grounds were common throughout Konoha. Standing in front of a tree stump, Kurenai Yuhi turned to look at Izayoi and the others, smiling slightly, until one of you is promoted to Chunin Squad Leader, I will be leading you on missions for a long time to come. So, let's start with self-introductions to get to know each other. I'll give you a demonstration. Kurenai Yuhi put one hand on her hip and smiled, my name is Kurenai Yuhi, my surname is Yuhi, you can call me Teacher Kurenai. My specialty is genjutsu, I'm good at all kinds of genjutsu, I like many things, for example, in terms of food, I like wasabi octopus, as well as shochu and vodka. My dream is to become a female ninja like Lady Tsunade. It's your turn. Kurenai Yuhi's gaze swept across the faces of Izayoi and the others, finally settling on Izayoi. Seeing this, Izayoi slowly opened his mouth. My name is Izayoi, I don't have a surname, my specialty is ninjutsu, I'm relatively good at fire release and wind release, I also know a little bit of medical ninjutsu and sensing technique. I like to train and fight with others, I hate many things, my dream is to become an excellent ninja. Kurenai Yuhi nodded, gaining a preliminary judgment of Izayoi's strength and personality. Then she looked at Hinata next to Izayoi. My name is Hinata Hyuga, my specialty is sensing and the Hyuga clan's gentle fist, I like to train with Izayoi-kun and my sister, I also like to eat red bean paste and cinnamon rolls, I hate shrimp and crab, my dream is also to become an excellent ninja, Hinata said softly. After listening to Hinata's self-introduction, Kurenai Yuhi looked at Izayoi again, her eyes moving back and forth between the two's faces, until Hinata's small face turned slightly red, and she couldn't help but lower her head, before revealing a playful smile, nodding knowingly, I see. Finally, Kurenai Yuhi's gaze landed on Shino Aburame, who was wrapped up tightly, his hood covering his hair, his forehead protector covering his forehead, his sunglasses covering his eyes, his collar covering his chin and nose, revealing only a little bit of skin on his face. Shino Aburame said plainly, my name is Shino Aburame, my specialty is also sensing and the clan's secret technique, I usually like to go to the forest to find insects, my favorite food is vegetable salad and winter melon, I hate things with strong smells, my dream is to find new species of insects. Very good, now everyone has a certain understanding of each other. Kurenai Yuhi smiled with satisfaction, and said, but before we start performing missions, I have to test your abilities. Tomorrow at 9 in the morning, at this same place, I want to play a survival exercise with you. By the way, the theme of this survival exercise is a snatching battle, your opponent is me. Kurenai Yuhi pointed to herself, then waved her hand and smiled, see you tomorrow, remember not to be late. After saying that, Kurenai Yuhi didn't give Izayoi and the others a chance to react or ask questions, and disappeared as a shadow. Izayoi and the others looked at each other. Izayoi, what do you think? Shino Aburame asked, preparing to test Izayoi. Although he was often suppressed by Izayoi and the others, Shino Aburame didn't think that his other aspects would be inferior to the two, except for his academic performance, which was not as good as Izayoi and Hinata. Unrestricted duels were only available in the 6th grade, once a month, as a monthly exam. Until graduation, Shino Aburame had not been matched with Izayoi and the others. Other classmates were not worthy of him using the clan's secret technique. So no one knew that Shino Aburame had been hiding his strength. He had already noticed the hint left by Kurenai Yuhi. If Izayoi hadn't noticed it, it meant that his brain wasn't as quick as his own. Considering Hinata Hyuga's relationship with Izayoi, Shino Aburame would still concede the position of leader. But if Izayoi's decisions were wrong, then he shouldn't blame him for not giving face and refuting him outright. Izayoi naturally didn't know Shino Aburame's thoughts. After listening to Shino Aburame's words, he slowly spoke his analysis, there's no need to wait until tomorrow, we can know the result now. With us few genin who just graduated, we are no match for a jonin at all. Even if tomorrow's survival exercise is just a snatch game, if the jonin isn't willing, we won't be able to snatch it at all. After all, you can also see that in the school's survival exercise, those chunin teachers actually showed mercy. As long as the performance isn't particularly bad, they won't be eliminated. So tomorrow's survival exercise, if our performance satisfies Teacher Kurenai, she will also show mercy to us. Then, how can we satisfy her? Izayoi leaned against the tree stump where Kurenai Yuhi had just stood and continued, Teacher Kurenai just said that she is testing our ability, not our strength. A ninja's battle is a battle of information. In the self-introduction just now, Teacher Kurenai has already revealed her information to us. She is good at all types of genjutsu. It's still morning now, and we can start the survival exercise immediately, but she gave us a day to prepare, and also pointed out the theme and location of the survival exercise. This is obviously giving us time to formulate a battle plan and set up traps. As long as our tactics and teamwork are up to par, Kurenai Yuhi should deliberately hold back and let us successfully snatch the passing props. Looking at the eloquent Izayoi, Hinata Hyuga's beautiful eyes sparkled, not concealing her admiration for Izayoi. Shino Aburame still had his hands in his pockets, wrapped up tightly, and his expression couldn't be seen. The newest novels are first released at. However, in his heart, he had completely recognized Izayoi and felt inferior to him. Although he also noticed the hints left by Kurenai Yuhi, Shino Aburame didn't think as detailed as Izayoi. Worthy of being the top student. It seems that not only is he hiding his strength, but probably no one in the class has seen Izayoi's true strength except for Hinata Hyuga, who just said that she likes to train with Izayoi. So, Shino Aburame asked again, then Izayoi, what is your tactic? Different from the previous probing, Shino Aburame recognized Izayoi's position as leader this time and prepared to listen to his arrangements. If you want to formulate tactics, the premise is that we have a deeper understanding of each other. Izayoi waved to Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburame and said, come over and reveal your trump cards, and talk about the moves you are best at, and the effects of those moves. Hearing this, Hinata Hyuga and Shino Aburame immediately walked over. Then the three of them formed a circle and began to communicate in a low voice. Not far away, Kurenai Yuhi stood on the treetop of a big tree, looking at the three people communicating, with a gratified smile on her face, even more satisfied with these three students and subordinates of Izayoi. The hint just now was indeed deliberately left by her. The purpose was to test the observation ability of Izayoi's 8th squad, and see how long it would take them to react. As a result, Izayoi's 8th squad was so outstanding. She had just left, and they immediately guessed that the survival exercise and assessment time were to test their ability and teamwork. Really excellent, such a combination. It's not that there is no hope of winning, I will definitely make you pay the price for underestimating me. Kurenai Yuhi thought of the bet before the team assignment, whether it was Kakashi Hatake or Asuma Sarutobi, who had been trying to please her, didn't take her seriously, she thought to herself. Immediately, her body twisted and disappeared like a mirage. Chapter 30, Reliving Childhood, Empty Wall Palm. Alright, that's our strategy. Half an hour later, Izayoi looked at Hinata and Shino Aburame in front of him, smiling, I'm counting on you two tomorrow, Hinata, Shino. Yes, I'll do my best. Hinata nodded vigorously. Don't worry. Shino Aburame also nodded slightly, but his heart was not as calm as it appeared, instead, it was stirred up. Inside his body, which had been modified into an insect hive, some insects were giving him feedback. Izayoi's chakra is very amazing. Among his peers, only Naruto Uzumaki can compare. No wonder he knows so many ninjutsu and has even developed powerful ninjutsu himself. This guy without a surname, his ancestors might not all be commoner shinobi. Perhaps in some era, there was an extraordinary existence. Otherwise, his chakra reserves couldn't be so exaggerated. In that case, let's head back. Seeing that Hinata and Shino Aburame both agreed with his strategy and accepted his arrangements, Izayoi couldn't help but nod in satisfaction, and then prepared to disband on the spot. Izayoi, aren't we setting up traps? Shino Aburame asked, after regaining his senses. There's no need. Izayoi shook his head and said, ordinary traps are ineffective against Jonin. Powerful traps require the use of highly destructive and expensive tools, and they may not be effective against Jonin, and may even harm our own people. If my analysis is correct, then this strategy is enough for us to pass the test. Hinata and Shino Aburame were slightly enlightened, feeling that Izayoi was right. Since there's no need to set up traps, I'll go back first. Shino Aburame left these words, put his hands in his pockets, and turned to leave. Teacher Kurenai had to go through self-introductions to realize that Izayoi and Hinata's relationship was unusual. Shino Aburame and these other classmates had known for the past few years. Therefore, Shino Aburame certainly wouldn't go with them, to be a killjoy. Although he was secretly eager to gossip, he didn't do so in order to maintain the Aburame clan's prestige personality. Watching Shino Aburame leave, until his back was no longer visible, Izayoi then held Hinata's small hand and smiled. Hinata, it seems like we haven't had a picnic in a long time, how about we have grilled fish for lunch today? Yes. Hinata remembered the picnic with Izayoi after finishing training a few years ago, and her beautiful eyes lit up, nodding vigorously. Since discovering her father's tacit approval in Hanabi's involvement, Izayoi and Hinata hadn't visited the abandoned training grounds in years. Their training was all done in the courtyard of Izayoi's house, or in the dojo on the first floor. Meals were either brought from Hinata's house or made fresh at Izayoi's. The grilled fish and hunting barbecues of their childhood, along with the warm moments they shared, had become beautiful memories for Hinata. Now that Izayoi had stirred up these memories, she really wanted to relive the feeling of those years. So, hand in hand, the two headed to the familiar stream. Izayoi and Hinata left the job of catching fish to their shadow clones. The two main bodies, however, stepped on the flowing water and engaged in taijutsu sparring above the stream. The chakra collision generated airwaves, splashing up a large number of ripples in water. The roaring sound also startled the beasts and birds in the forest on both sides of the stream, causing them to flee in panic. When everything returned to calm, white smoke rose, and a fragrance filled the air. Izayoi and Hinata spent the entire noon outdoors, reliving their childhood. The next day, 8:30 in the morning, Izayoi and Hinata arrived at the training grounds. Next to a tree stump, Shino Aburame was already standing there, seemingly having waited for a long time. "Good morning, Shino." Izayoi raised his hand to greet Shino Aburame. "Morning." Shino Aburame nodded in response. The atmosphere fell silent instantly. Having read the original story, Izayoi knew that Shino Aburame actually had a hidden, sultry side. However, Izayoi still couldn't find a topic to chat with him about. After all, Shino Aburame's presence was too low, he had never had friends in the class, and his interest was in finding insects, so they had absolutely no common ground. So after saying hello, Izayoi didn't know what else to say. Moreover, knowing Shino Aburame's hidden side, and not knowing if the other party had any bugs that could eavesdrop, Izayoi didn't whisper to Hinata either. So, he leaned against a tree stump, closed his eyes, and waited for teacher Kurenai to arrive. Hinata also put her hands in her pockets, leaning next to Izayoi. Time passed by. When a whoosh sound entered their ears. Izayoi opened his eyes, and Kurenai Yuhi was already standing in front of them. "Teacher Kurenai." Izayoi and the others immediately greeted politely. "Good morning, sorry to keep you waiting." Kurenai Yuhi nodded with a smile, then took out 3 bells from her pocket and said, "Your next task is very simple, which is to snatch these 3 bells from me within an hour at all costs, even if it means killing me." Tying the bells around her waist, Kurenai Yuhi took out a small alarm clock and set it to ring automatically after 1 hour. Placing the alarm clock on a tree stump, Kurenai Yuhi turned to look at Izayoi and the others, saying, "Now, officially begin." As soon as the words fell, the figures of Izayoi and the others disappeared into thin air. Kurenai Yuhi could only hear the sound of the wind blowing through the leaves. Looking around the forest, Kurenai Yuhi had a confident smile on her lips. She didn't use the body flicker technique to defeat them one by one. Instead, she deliberately walked to an open space, waiting for Izayoi and the others to take the initiative to attack. This wasn't arrogance, but a matter of understanding. Kurenai Yuhi had also attended the ninja academy and knew what was taught there. Even if Izayoi and the others were excellent, they only had a good foundation, mastering low-level ninjutsu and clan secret technique left by their families. The Hyuga clan and the Aburame clan were both famous shinobi clans in the shinobi world. Not only did their own people understand what their clans were good at and their fighting styles, but even people from other villages had thoroughly studied them. Although she specialized in genjutsu, she was still an all-round jonin who had mastered at least 2 types of nature transformation. Not to mention Izayoi and the others, even if several more genin teams joined forces, they couldn't possibly be her opponent. That's what Kurenai Yuhi thought. But the next second, she was shocked into a cold sweat. Trigram empty wall palm. Only the girl's delicate shout was heard, coming from far and near. Then, a terrifying shock wave, like an invisible wall, crashed towards Kurenai Yuhi at an extremely fast speed. Wherever it passed, it stirred up huge clouds of dust. Looking at the sweeping dust, Kurenai Yuhi's pupils shrank. She didn't have time to gather chakra in her feet to use the body flicker technique, so she could only jump back subconsciously. The shock wave flew past her, but the dust engulfed her. Boom boom boom. The shock wave flew into the forest, directly breaking several trees that were as thick as several people could hug, showing its power. The scene shifted to the starting point of the shock wave. Under a large tree, stood 2 identical Byakugan girls, back to back, hand to hand. It was Hinata and her shadow clone. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 31. Easily Pass, the Bane of Genjutsu. What powerful combination technique, it seems the top 3 are all hiding their strength. Shino Aburame, hiding in a tree, muttered to himself as he watched the dust and mist stirred up in the clearing and forest. At the same time, he quickly sent out a large number of bugs, using the cover of the dust and mist to quietly fly to Kurenai Yuhi's side, wanting to take advantage of her carelessness and snatch the bell from her waist. Unfortunately, Hinata had already alerted her. As the Jonin instructor of the sensor team, Kurenai Yuhi's sensing technique was equally outstanding. Startled by Hinata's combination technique, she had already released her senses after being engulfed by the dust and mist. The location of Izayoi and the others, as well as the approaching bugs, were all discovered by Kurenai Yuhi. With a poof, a sound like a balloon bursting rang out in the dust and mist. When the dust and mist dissipated, there was only a piece of wood with bugs circling around it on the ground. Substitution technique. Seeing this, 8th Squad was not surprised. Hinata, with veins bulging on her temples, looked around. In her black and white vision, Shino Aburame hiding in a certain tree, Kurenai Yuhi using the white smoke to conceal herself and Shunshin into the forest, and Izayoi, who had already Shunshin into a blur and was rushing towards Kurenai Yuhi, were all exposed to her clairvoyance and farsight. Seeing Izayoi, who had already appeared in front of Kurenai Yuhi and was launching an attack on Kurenai Yuhi, Hinata's Byakugan seemed to see something, and the corners of her lips couldn't help but rise slightly. Immediately, she took out a piece of cloth, nodded in the direction of Shino Aburame, and her figure disappeared. The buzzing of bugs followed closely behind. In another forest, the clanging of metal collisions rang out. The scene zoomed in, and a pair of men and women with a height difference of only a few centimeters were wielding a kunai in their backhand, engaging in close combat. Aiming at Kurenai Yuhi's vital points, the kunai in Izayoi's hand attacked with stabs, chops, and slashes. The speed of the attack, and the decisiveness of the attack, even Kurenai Yuhi could only defend passively. At first, Kurenai Yuhi, who was rich in combat experience, did not panic. But soon, she seemed to have discovered something incredible, and her pupils suddenly contracted, her expression changing drastically. "How is that possible?" she even exclaimed in surprise. Izayoi, knowing what she was shocked by, smirked slightly. The next second, he turned into a cloud of white smoke with a poof. At the same time, 3 shouts rang out from around the forest. Fire release, Great Dragon Fire Technique. The orange-red flames, like the evening glow, enveloped Kurenai Yuhi. 3 fire dragons, each about 4 meters long, roared towards her in a triangular formation. Kurenai Yuhi also didn't have time to Shunshin to dodge, and Genjutsu was of no use, so she could only quickly form hand seals with both hands and shout, "Water release, water formation wall." A waterfall of water spewed from her mouth, colliding with the incoming fire dragon as Kurenai Yuhi's body spun. With a burst and a sizzling sound, an astonishing white mist spread and diffused. Cough, cough. The area covered by the mist was incredibly large, even reaching the open space. Kurenai Yuhi's figure burst out of the mist, coughing from the fumes. Suddenly, Kurenai Yuhi seemed to realize something and froze in place. The next second, a familiar sound reached her ears. Ding-a-ling, the pleasant sound of bells, drawing closer. A gust of wind dispersed the mist, and the 8th Squad emerged from the forest. Standing in the middle, Izayoi lightly shook the bells in his hand, looked at Kurenai Yuhi with a smile, and said, "Teacher Kurenai, would you say we passed? Impressive, even though I was on guard against you, you still managed to snatch the bells." Looking at the spotless 8th Squad, and then at her own slightly disheveled appearance, Kurenai Yuhi felt a little embarrassed, but more than that, she felt joy in her heart. She smiled brightly and praised without reservation, "Very strong skills, excellent tactics, your teacher lost." "No. A ninja's battle is a battle of information." Izayoi shook his head and smiled. "The reason we obtained the bells so easily is that, Teacher Kurenai, you revealed your specialization and didn't know enough about our information. If it were a life or death battle, we wouldn't have been so relaxed. We took advantage of Teacher Kurenai deliberately holding back." Hearing this, Hinata and Shino Aburame, who were deliberately lagging behind Izayoi by half a step, looked at Izayoi in astonishment, their inner thoughts differing. "Izayoi-kun, speaks so nicely. So, you can talk like that. Speaking of which, is this flattering?" Kurenai Yuhi was also slightly stunned, and then the smile on her face became even brighter, and her gaze towards Izayoi was full of affection. "You really know how to talk." Kurenai Yuhi, her embarrassment resolved, immediately regained her heroic posture, walked over and patted Izayoi on the shoulder, then reached out and put her arm around Hinata's fragrant shoulder, and said with a smile, "Let's go, let's celebrate the establishment of the 8th Squad, your teacher will treat you to a big meal." Walking along the forest path leading to the central street, Kurenai Yuhi looked at Izayoi curiously and asked, Izayoi, how did your shadow clone break my genjutsu in battle? Breaking genjutsu is taught at the Ninja Academy. All you have to do is disrupt the flow of chakra in your body. It sounds easy, but it is very difficult to do. Because during battle, it is impossible to disrupt chakra. After all, if you want to disrupt the chakra in your body, you need to carefully mobilize the chakra in your body, which requires hand seals. The reason Kurenai Yuhi was shocked just now was not that the person fighting her was just Izayoi's shadow clone, nor that Izayoi's main body and shadow clone were ambushing around. Instead, Izayoi's shadow clone actually ignored her genjutsu. This is a closely guarded secret, Teacher Kurenai. Izayoi raised his index finger, held it in front of his mouth, and smiled. The battle of ninjas is the battle of information, and secrets make a man more attractive. As he said this, Izayoi winked at Hinata, causing the girl to lower her head shyly. You don't even count as a man yet, just a little kid. Kurenai Yuhi rolled her eyes and said, wait until you're 20 and can drink with your teacher before you say that. Even so, she didn't continue to press the issue. However, her evaluation of Izayoi in her heart far exceeded that of Hinata and Shino Aburame, the children of the ninja clans. A huge amount of chakra, powerful fire release ninjutsu, a precocious personality, and this ninja quality. At this moment, Kurenai Yuhi finally understood why Izayoi was able to overwhelm the children of the major ninja clans and win the title of top student. Regarding Kurenai Yuhi's teasing, Izayoi smiled without saying a word. Of course, he wouldn't tell Kurenai Yuhi that the reason he could ignore her genjutsu was not only because his yin release chakra was very strong, but also because he could perform ninjutsu without hand seals. Others need to form hand seals to mobilize chakra, but Izayoi doesn't need to at all. He is the bane of genjutsu. Chapter 32, First Fetal Movement. Since it was still early. After eating the big meal Kurenai Yuhi treated them to, 8th Squad didn't disband on the spot but headed to the Hokage building to officially start their mission. 8th Squad's first mission was naturally a D-rank mission. At first, Hinata and Shino Aburame were quite interested in the mission. Remember the first website domain. However, when they saw Kurenai Yuhi take them to a smelly ditch and ask them to find a way to clean up the garbage on the surface, they instantly lost interest. This mission was not difficult at all for Hinata and Izayoi, who could both walk on water. The same went for Shino Aburame. He had already learned tree climbing and water walking in the 3rd grade. These techniques, which the Ninja Academy didn't teach, were basic skills that all major ninja clans required their children to master. Even if Izayoi didn't teach Hinata tree climbing and water walking, Hiyashi Hyuga would still teach her once her pressure point strike reached a certain level. After all, this was chakra control for multitasking. Mastering chakra control at this stage would not only greatly increase the power of pressure point strike, but also make learning gentle fist easier. Seeing that Izayoi and the others had already mastered chakra control that the Ninja Academy didn't teach, Kurenai Yuhi was slightly surprised. But thinking about Hinata and Shino Aburame's backgrounds, as well as Izayoi's strength and his relationship with Hinata, Kurenai Yuhi suddenly understood. These techniques were indeed nothing to them. Soon, Kurenai Yuhi became troubled again. She had originally wanted to use this mission to take the opportunity to teach Izayoi and the others more advanced chakra control. Now that Izayoi and the others already knew it, what should she teach them next? Izayoi didn't know what Kurenai Yuhi was thinking, let alone her worries. Otherwise, he would definitely have a good impression of Kurenai Yuhi. Although they were called teachers, Guidance Jonin were not teaching teachers. Guidance Jonin and Genin had a relationship of superiors and subordinates in addition to being teachers and students. The job of Guidance Jonin was only to guide the newly graduated Genin on how to carry out missions and become qualified Genin. If they had promising subordinates, they could deepen the teacher-student relationship and pass on their skills to them. If they didn't like them, then when someone in the team was promoted to Chunin squad leader, the Guidance Jonin would become a hands-off manager, and they would only reunite if the village arranged high-level missions for them. Therefore, Guidance Jonin didn't necessarily have to teach their subordinates ninjutsu. The channels for Genin to learn ninjutsu were not limited to obtaining it from Guidance Jonin, they could also earn merits by completing missions and then exchange them with the village. Of course, the 5 elements release that Genin could exchange for were all relatively low-level techniques that had long been rampant in the shinobi world. Only advanced ninjas who had mastered shape transformation and nature transformation could exchange for more advanced ninjutsu. It was only the 2nd day since they met, and Kurenai Yuhi was already thinking about teaching Izayoi and Hinata skills. Such a teacher was truly dedicated. The 7th squad would definitely be moved to tears if they saw this. After all, they still had to use tools to clean up garbage, and Kakashi Hatake, who lay in the trees reading little yellow books, was too lazy to teach them tree climbing and water walking. After completing their first D-rank mission and receiving their reward, the 8th squad disbanded at the entrance of the Hokage building. Hinata, let's have a good meal today. Yes. Izayoi and Hinata took their first wages and went to the market to buy ingredients, preparing to enjoy themselves. However, as they carried the bags back to Izayoi's house, preparing to start cooking and then call Hanabi over. Hiss. Izayoi, who had just changed his shoes in the entryway, suddenly frowned and sucked in a cold breath. The bags in his hand also fell to the ground. Izayoi-kun, what's wrong? Hinata immediately asked with a worried expression. Hinata, my Kekkei Genkei, is about to awaken. Izayoi covered his eyes, leaned against the wall, his expression somewhat uncomfortable, but the corners of his mouth were raised, his tone full of excitement. Hearing this, Hinata, who came over to support him, immediately opened her red lips wide, surprised and delighted. Really? Izayoi-kun, you also have a Kekkei Genkei. Yes, this is a secret that only you know. Izayoi raised his hand and placed it on Hinata's shoulder, and smiled. Hinata, help me upstairs, I have something I need your help with. Yes. Hinata immediately nodded with a serious face, ignoring the ingredients, and helped Izayoi upstairs. Arriving in the room and lying on the bed, Izayoi closed his eyes and said, Hinata, first go get a roll of bandages. Okay. The newest novels are first published here. Hinata walked out of the room, took a medicine box, took out a roll of bandages from it, and stuffed it into Izayoi's hand. Izayoi tied the bandage around his eyes, and then said, open the drawer of my bedside table and take out an eye mask for me. Yes. Hinata nodded again, opened the drawer, took out a black eye mask, and put it into Izayoi's hand. After putting on the eye mask, Izayoi formed a hand seal, and an astonishing perception instantly enveloped the entire Konoha Central Street. A few seconds later, Izayoi put down his hand and solemnly instructed, Hinata, remember not to reveal the matter of my ancestral Kekkei Genkei awakening, not even to Hanabi now. I understand, Izayoi-kun. Hinata nodded with a serious expression. Even without Izayoi reminding her, she wouldn't reveal it. After all, Izayoi-kun is just a commoner without a surname, and now he's alone. If the fact that he possesses a Kekkei Genkei were to be exposed, it would likely attract a lot of attention. If this Kekkei Genkei belonged to the Land of Fire and the ninja clan still existed, then he could acknowledge his ancestors and return to the clan. But if it's a foreign Kekkei Genkei, it means Izayoi's ancestors moved to the Land of Fire from elsewhere. Even if they settled in the Land of Fire before Konoha was established and there are no problems with his background, Izayoi wouldn't gain the village's trust, and his future would be essentially over. She and Izayoi would have no future either. Therefore, this secret cannot be revealed to anyone, including Hanabi, who is still young. I have a feeling that it will take a few days for my Kekkei Genkei to fully awaken. Izayoi continued to instruct. During this time, if the 8th squad has a mission, use a shadow clone to transform into my appearance and go. Remember, you must come here and wear my clothes before you go, otherwise Shino Aburame will notice the flaw. Also, have the shadow clone tell them that it's my shadow clone and that I'm refining an ninjutsu I'm developing during this time. Yes, during this time, find an excuse to keep Hanabi from coming here. Okay. I won't be able to see for the next few days, so I'll have to trouble you to bring me food. However, I might hide using the invisibility technique. If you find that I'm not here, you can call out to me, but remember not to activate your Byakugan. I understand. Hinata memorized everything. Then, I'll have to trouble you for the next few days, Hinata, Izayoi said with a smile. Hinata nodded repeatedly, her small face flushed with excitement. Since she was little, Izayoi had always taken care of her. Now, it was finally her turn to take care of Izayoi. Hinata suddenly felt full of anticipation for the next few days. She even wanted to go home and prepare a daily routine. Chapter 33, Tenseigen. Whether it was because the potential hadn't been fully unlocked or because of insufficient chakra. Izayoi's first awakening didn't last for a few days, but for a full 2 weeks. For these 2 weeks, he lived without light, like a blind man. Others who can't see would definitely feel very depressed and irritable. However, Izayoi was very happy. Because Hinata was so good at taking care of people, just like her Yamato Nadeshiko-style personality, she was simply a perfect wife and mother. Every day, she either brought 3 meals from home or bought ingredients to cook for Izayoi. Afraid that Izayoi would get tired of lying in bed, she often helped Izayoi walk around the room and living room, patiently serving him with washing up, and even scrubbing his back and washing his hair. When 8th Squad had a mission, she played 2 roles, going out to do the mission in place of Izayoi. When there were no missions, she either left a shadow clone at home and came herself, or sent a shadow clone to take care of Izayoi and talk to him, fearing that Izayoi would feel lonely. Izayoi only needed to open his mouth for food and reach out for clothes every day, acting like a useless person. And Hinata enjoyed it. Having been taken care of by Izayoi since she was a child, this was the first time she had taken care of Izayoi. She was full of motivation every day, and even dreamed of how she took care of Izayoi and then received praise from Izayoi. Fortunately, Hiyashi Hyuga didn't see such a scene, otherwise he would definitely feel his fists hardening. However, happy times always pass quickly. After being blind for half a month, with his brain secreting chakra every day and his eyeballs feeling like something was squirming inside, Izayoi finally felt everything calm down. The first stage of the all things of nature power had emerged. On this day, Hinata drew the curtains, closed the door, and asked Izayoi curiously while unwrapping the bandages, "Izayoi-kun, is your bloodline limit also a dojutsu?" Yes. Izayoi nodded. Could it be that Izayoi-kun, you awakened the legendary Rinnegan, or the red eyes that can restrain the Byakugan? Hinata was even more curious. Why don't you say blood dragon eye? Izayoi complained in his heart, but on the surface, he shook his head and said, I don't know either. If my brain hadn't suddenly secreted chakra, I wouldn't have known that I had awakened a bloodline limit across generations. You'll know when you see it later. Okay. Hinata quickly unwrapped the bandages, then came to Izayoi and stared at Izayoi's tightly closed eyes. When Izayoi opened his eyelids, Hinata's beautiful eyes widened instantly, and she covered her mouth and exclaimed, "What beautiful eyes!" In the dimly lit room, Izayoi's eyes, like luminous pearls, flickered with blue and white light. The whites of his eyes were still there, but the color of his pupils had turned sky blue, and even his pupils had turned blue, emitting a white streamer, forming a white pattern around them, beautiful and exquisite. These eyes may have reappeared after 1,000 years, or they may have appeared on Earth for the first time. It does not belong to the 3 great dojutsu, nor is it the red eyes that can restrain the Byakugan, nor is it the blood dragon eye of the Chinook clan, but it is as famous as the legendary leader of the 3 great dojutsu, possessing the power of destruction and creation, the Tenseigan. What a powerful dojutsu, it's not even on the same level. Izayoi raised his hand and touched the corner of his right eye, his eyes looking at Hinata in front of him, but his gaze had already penetrated houses, streets, villages, forests, cities, turning into an invisible net, covering the entire land of fire. The Byakugan Gold, a bloodline limit with a range of 80 kilometers, was already amazing enough. However, in front of the Tenseigan's farsight, it was like a soldier king and an infant. In this world, it was the difference between super cage level and cage level, not in the same dimension at all. Just completing the first fetal movement, Izayoi could see the entire land of fire. Then what about completing the second fetal movement, and the final evolution? By then, what exaggerated level would his farsight range reach? Withdrawing his farsighted gaze, Izayoi looked at Hinata bowing in front of him, staring at the exquisite black headlights wrapped in black fishnet lining that were not zipped up, and suddenly the corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Good fellow, it actually comes with a green, healthy, and harmonious system. That's right, Izayoi just tried the Tenseigan's perspective ability. After the Byakugan evolved into the Tenseigan, the picture Izayoi saw was finally no longer black and white. The farsight was amazing, and the perspective could easily penetrate all objects and buildings. So, Izayoi did something that every man with perspective wanted to do. However, when Izayoi used perspective on the human body, he didn't see the picture he wanted to see, but instead saw colorful bones, internal organs, meridians, and chakra. Trash, Izayoi evaluated in his heart. But thinking that there was also a Tenseigan on the moon, Izayoi's mood instantly became comfortable. It's good that he can't see it. Taking Izayoi's expression changes into her eyes, Hinata curiously asked, "Izayoi-kun, are you exploring the abilities of your bloodline limit?" Yes. Izayoi smiled and nodded, saying, "My dojutsu should not be the Rinnegan and blood dragon eye you mentioned, but a brand new, or possibly long-lost dojutsu." Then what are its abilities? Hinata asked with interest. Its ability is this. Rise. Izayoi raised his hand towards Hinata. The next second, Hinata's body was as if she had come from Earth to outer space, freed from the Earth's gravity, floating towards Izayoi. Then a dramatic scene appeared. Perhaps because it was the first time using gravity, Izayoi exerted too much force, and didn't notice that the distance between him and Hinata was very close. Hinata, who was already 8 centimeters shorter than Izayoi, was a little taller than Izayoi sitting on the chair after floating in the air. The flying body, that conscience that looked down on her peers, just hit Izayoi's open palm. Ah! Hinata exclaimed in surprise, her neck and small face flushing red at a speed visible to the naked eye, steam rising from her head. Cough, cough, miscalculation, miscalculation. Izayoi subconsciously practiced his finger strength, then quickly released Hinata, coughed lightly, and changed the subject, this is my ability. Fortunately, it wasn't the first time being used as a grip strength tester, and his immunity was far superior to the original work. Hinata only lowered her head shyly for a moment before looking up and asking, is this wind release? No, this is gravity, and then, repulsion. Izayoi looked around, his gaze fixed on a decorative vase. Immediately, he pointed his finger in the air. Crash! The sound of the vase shattering rang out. However, the vase wasn't hit by anything, but suddenly flew towards the wall and smashed itself. The fragments of the vase didn't fall to the ground, but floated in the air, and then, as if possessing self-awareness, flew into the trash can on their own. So amazing. Hinata revealed a dumbfounded expression. Izayoi, switching back and forth between gravity and repulsion, also had a slight upturn at the corner of his mouth, thinking to himself. Finally, I have the ability to protect myself. The Byakugan evolving into the Tenseigan, the first fetal movement, brought Izayoi 2 foundations and 3 abilities. The 2 foundations were naturally the sublimated farsight and X-ray vision abilities. As for the 3 abilities, they were gravity and repulsion, and wireless puppet. Rather than calling it wireless puppet, it was more like an alternative 6 paths technique. Izayoi could use the Tenseigan to condense chakra and input it into the puppet's chakra core, giving it life, a heart, and controlling the puppet from an ultra-long distance. These puppets could also mobilize the chakra within their bodies to release light bullet attacks. Unfortunately, he didn't have yin-yang release yet, otherwise he could use yin-yang release to create black rods and remotely provide chakra to the puppets. Izayoi thought to himself, then summoned a light screen that only he could see. Host. Izayoi. Talent perks. Bloodline Limit Tenseigan Red, Otsutsuki Bloodline Red, Seijai Red, Prince of the Byakugan Red, 6 Paths Aptitude Red, Chakra Control Gold, Uzumaki Bloodline Purple Plus, All Attribute Constitution Purple Plus, Medical Genius Blue Plus. Points, 12,391. After the Byakugan evolved into the Tenseigan, the suffix of the Bloodline Limit Byakugan in the perk column had become Tenseigan, and the level had also changed from gold to red. Moreover, just after completing the first fetal movement, the Tenseigan's ranking surpassed the Otsutsuki Bloodline and was in first place. The ultimate dojutsu, as expected, is in existence above red. Izayoi murmured in his heart. Chapter 34, Izayoi's Strength, the first C-rank mission. Perhaps due to the evolution of his own eyes, Izayoi's Tenseigan, the ability awakened during its first stirrings, is not only different from Toneri Otsutsuki's, but its power is also extremely stable. I hope readers will remember our domain name Taiwan Novel website. Here. Even if his body suffers severe damage, the power of the Tenseigan will not disappear. Only when his chakra and eye power are exhausted will his Tenseigan regress back to the Byakugan. After the Byakugan evolves into the Tenseigan, the eyes continue to absorb chakra secreted by the brain, much like accumulating energy. Once the energy is full, the second stirring will arrive. Just like how the Byakugan absorbed energy for 2 years before evolving into the Tenseigan, Izayoi has a premonition that his second stirring may take some time to arrive. However, Izayoi is already very satisfied with awakening the Tenseigan now. 12 years old is still childhood, and childhood is just coming to an end. 15 years old is when one enters adolescence. At that age, girls are completely inferior to boys. Even if Izayoi does nothing, when his body enters the growth period at 15, he will be like Toneri Otsutsuki on the moon, and his potential will be quickly realized. At 19, even if he has no combat experience, it doesn't matter, as long as he transplants a pair of Byakugan with extremely high purity, he can master the power of another dimension. Even Toneri Otsutsuki, who only has 1 red perk, can do this, let alone Izayoi, who has several red perks. Awakening the Tenseigan at the age of 12 is the best proof of having a cheat. Izayoi, is that your main body now? Having safely passed the first stirring period, Izayoi finally returned to the team. As soon as he came back, Shino Aburame immediately noticed the changes in his insects, and his gaze towards Izayoi was filled with shock. The insects were afraid. Has Izayoi become so much stronger in just half a month? What ninjutsu is he developing? Yes, my ninjutsu is already perfected, so I came back. Izayoi nodded with a smile. What ninjutsu are you practicing? Since Shino Aburame was wearing sunglasses and his collar was pulled up so high, Kurenai Yuhi didn't see the change in his expression, but was just curious about what ninjutsu Izayoi had been practicing during this time. Secrets make a man more charming. Izayoi still raised his index finger and held it in front of his mouth, playing coy. If there's a chance, Teacher Kurenai, you will see it, I guarantee it will shock you. Izayoi, has anyone told you that you're very annoying? A big tick mark appeared on Kurenai Yuhi's forehead. Izayoi turned to look at Hinata and asked, Hinata, am I very annoying? No. Hinata shook her head honestly. You two, are you really not a couple? Kurenai Yuhi blurted out a line just like her classmates from the Ninja Academy. Izayoi smiled without saying a word, while Hinata's cheeks flushed red. After the interlude, 8th Squad continued to carry out D-rank missions. Sometimes they had one per day, sometimes 2 or 3, and sometimes they had a few days off before taking on another mission. Whether it was cleaning up garbage, helping villagers take care of children, or dealing with crops, 8th Squad completed everything well, earning unanimous praise from the clients. During this time, Kurenai Yuhi also wanted to impart her genjutsu to 8th Squad. However, she was rejected by Hinata and Shino Aburame, who only wanted to cultivate their clan secret technique. Izayoi also refused. If he hadn't completed his first fetal movement, Izayoi would have been willing to accept this favor. Although his stats page was very impressive, with several red perks that looked intimidating. In reality, Izayoi, who had not yet awakened his Tenseigen, had only improved his perception and healing abilities over the years, and the red perks had not brought him much improvement in combat power. Without the Super Hurricane Combination Sphere and the Perfecting Ultimate Technique, Izayoi's attack methods were only the low-level wind release left by his father, and a few fire release ninjutsu from the Uchiha clan. With the multiple shadow clone technique in these ninjutsu, Izayoi was not afraid of any Jonin. As long as he completed that ultimate technique, he would be an elite Jonin who could threaten the cage, just like Kakashi Hatake. Izayoi's previous strength was on par with a Jonin. Now that he had awakened the Tenseigen and possessed the two major abilities of attraction and repulsion, Izayoi was now like Diva Path Pain without the planetary devastation, on par with a cage-level powerhouse. He no longer lacked attack, defense, or support abilities. There was no need to accept this favor from Kurenai Yuhi. So Kurenai Yuhi, just like in the original story, only acted as a guide, teaching 8th Squad how to become qualified ninjas. And so, time came to May 1st. On this morning, 8th Squad gathered at the usual place. Your performance last month was very good, with no negative reviews on any of the missions. As soon as Kurenai Yuhi arrived, she brought good news to 8th Squad. As a reward, today I'll take you to receive a higher level mission. Hearing this, Hinata's expression immediately showed joy. If he took off his sunglasses, one would also see Shino Aburame's eyes light up slightly, and the corners of his mouth under his collar turn up slightly. Is it a C-rank mission? Izayoi asked knowingly. Yes. Kurenai Yuhi nodded and said, Genin can generally only perform D-rank missions. Only experienced Genin, or Genin led by a supervising Jonin, can perform C-rank missions. Because unlike D-rank missions, which are just chores, most C-rank missions will leave the village, and you may encounter unknown enemies, with the risk of losing your life. In theory, you only graduated a little over a month ago, and you're not qualified to carry out C-rank missions yet. But seeing how well you've performed during this time, I'll reward you. Let's go, to the Hokage building. Teacher Kurenai led the expectant 8th Squad to the Hokage office in the Hokage building. You're here to receive a C-rank mission. Hiruzen Sarutobi held a pipe, puffing out smoke as he sized up Izayoi and Hinata, whose heights towered over their peers, and he seemed somewhat dazed. Had those two children, once so chubby-cheeked, grown so much already? Then, recalling the scene of Izayoi fighting Sasuke Uchiha, even with the latter having activated his Sharingan, he was completely suppressed. Hiruzen Sarutobi nodded and said, Alright, although your 8th Squad has only been established for a little over a month, every mission has received high praise from the clients. Since your guiding Jonin believes you're qualified, then we'll arrange a C-rank mission for you. After saying that, Hiruzen Sarutobi took out a large scroll from under the table. Opening the scroll, Hiruzen Sarutobi's finger gently slid across the surface, quickly stopping. Your sensory abilities are very good, there's a mission here that's very suitable for you. Hiruzen Sarutobi exhaled a mouthful of smoke and slowly said, recently, a mining team came to Konoha to do business. They're afraid of being robbed by bandits and rogue ninja on their way back, so they've commissioned Konoha to escort them back to the land of rivers. This mission will be entrusted to you, is that alright? Hiruzen Sarutobi looked at Kurenai Yuhi. Yes. Kurenai Yuhi respectfully nodded. Izayoi and the other two didn't speak. Hiruzen Sarutobi wrapped chakra flames around his finger and pressed it onto the scroll's surface. With a pop, a small cloud of smoke dissipated. A scroll that could be held in one hand appeared in Hiruzen Sarutobi's hand. Hiruzen Sarutobi threw the scroll to Kurenai Yuhi and said, the client's information is on this, go and negotiate with them. Yes, Lord Hokage. Kurenai Yuhi said respectfully again. Then, she led the 8th squad and left the Hokage office. From beginning to end, Hiruzen Sarutobi didn't speak to the 8th squad, and no one in the 8th squad was as rash as Naruto Uzumaki. Exiting the Hokage building, Kurenai Yuhi opened the scroll, then led the 8th squad to the outside of an inn. Wait for me here, I'll go and negotiate with the client. Kurenai Yuhi left those words and walked to a carriage parked outside the inn, communicating with the person in charge of guarding the carriage. Soon, that person led Kurenai Yuhi into the inn. If you looked closely, you would notice that there was a flag hanging on the carriage, with the character, iron, written on it. The destination is the land of rivers, so it's certain that this, iron, character has nothing to do with the land of iron. Mining team, it should mean iron ore. It seems to be written in the book that the land of rivers has a complex geographical environment, with dense mountains and forests within its borders. The people seem to live on the mountains or at the foot of the mountains, and the villages are also known as mountain villages. Izayoi and the others analyzed in their minds. Chapter 35, Kurenai Yuhi and Shino Aburame who were scared. Several minutes passed before Kurenai Yuhi emerged from the inn. The client still needs to make purchases in Konoha. Tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock, be on time to gather at the village entrance, Kurenai Yuhi instructed. After disbanding, go back and prepare a change of clothes, as well as camping tents and blankets. It's best to prepare some soldier pills too. If you can't fit everything, then buy a storage scroll, your reward money for this period is more than enough to cover it. Yes. 8th squad nodded in response. Gather at 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, and remember not to be late, Kurenai Yuhi reminded again, then disappeared in a body flicker technique. Izayoi and Hinata also parted ways with Shino Aburame. Izayoi-kun, you don't need to buy a storage scroll, I'll bring one tomorrow, Hinata said softly. Izayoi pinched Hinata's small face and teased, as expected of a young lady from a wealthy clan, you're going to take care of me so soon. Take care of. Hinata's face instantly turned red, and her voice trembled. Just kidding. Izayoi patted Hinata's head, then took her small hand and smiled, there's no need to bring a storage scroll, I'll just bring a backpack. If we need to camp outdoors, I'll stand guard and protect you. Hearing this, Hinata's face turned even redder, and she subconsciously lowered her head, looking at her hand intertwined with his, a happy smile immediately appearing on her lips. Her heart felt as sweet as if she had eaten honey. Although their relationship hadn't completely broken through, Izayoi and Hinata's interactions were no different from those of a couple. If it weren't for the consideration that announcing their relationship might reach the clan and attract obstruction from some elders, Hinata would have already taken the initiative to confess to Izayoi. Once she and Izayoi both became Jonin, or elite Jonin who could become clan heads and trump card combatants, they would be able to be together completely. Even her father and the clan elders wouldn't be able to stop them. That day would definitely not be far off. Hinata suddenly squeezed Izayoi's hand, thinking to herself. Izayoi didn't know what Hinata was thinking, or he would definitely show a gratified smile again. Hinata, who had changed her personality, was already excellent enough. Hinata, with a goal, would become even more outstanding. With further guidance, the princess of the Byakugan would bloom with dazzling light. The next day, at 7:50 in the morning, Izayoi and Hinata each carried a backpack and arrived at the village entrance. There, Shino Aburame, also carrying only a backpack, had been waiting for a long time. Good morning. Morning. Shino, aren't you bringing a tent? I am, it's in the storage scroll. Let me know if you need soldier pills. Thank you, but Hinata has already prepared some for me. Quote. After exchanging greetings as usual, Izayoi started an awkward conversation with Shino Aburame. However, this time it wasn't the aloof Shino Aburame who killed the conversation, but Izayoi himself. Shino Aburame, who was inexplicably fed a mouthful of dog food, didn't show any change on the surface, but his mood was quite bad. However, his character prevented him from being sarcastic, so he could only choose to remain silent. Seeing that Shino Aburame had stopped talking again, Izayoi could only go to the side with Hinata to whisper sweet nothings. To avoid being eavesdropped on, Izayoi stuck to normal topics and didn't tease Hinata. Sorry to keep you waiting. Before long, Kurenai Yuhi's voice drew the attention of Izayoi and the others. A convoy of a dozen or so people came into view. Leading the way were Kurenai Yuhi and an ordinary-looking middle-aged man. The middle-aged man was currently sizing up Izayoi and the others, a warm smile on his face, his joy visible through the windows of his soul. Moreover, Izayoi and the others noticed that his gaze lingered on Hinata the longest. It wasn't because of Hinata's figure that surpassed her peers, but because of her eyes. Izayoi released his senses and didn't detect any malice from him. It seemed that he wasn't targeting Hinata's Byakugan, but because there was a Byakugan in the escort team. The Hyuga clan's Byakugan was the most famous sensory eye in the shinobi world. Its 360-degree long-range vision and X-ray vision could see through all low-level invisibility techniques. Even earth release that could merge the body into the ground couldn't escape the eyes of the Hyuga clan. With the Byakugan in the team, they could detect danger in advance and escape in time. The commission fee for a C-rank mission was enough to hire a member of the Hyuga clan, which was simply a huge profit. No wonder the middle-aged man was so happy. Having figured this out, Izayoi didn't care anymore. Let me introduce you, this is our client, you can call him Mr. Nishimura. Kurenai Yuhi introduced the middle-aged man to Izayoi and the others. Mr. Nishimura. 8th Squad politely greeted him. Hello, I'll be in your care from now on. Mr. Nishimura didn't put on any airs and instead adopted a very humble posture. Seeing that the client was so easy to get along with, 8th Squad, who had encountered bizarre clients on D-rank missions before and had to put in some effort to get a good review in the end, breathed a sigh of relief. Let's go, we can set off. Kurenai Yuhi and Mr. Nishimura handed the pre-arranged exit permits to the Chunin guarding the gate, and Izayoi and the others left the village where they had lived for 12 years for the first time. At first, Hinata and Shino Aburame were very much looking forward to what the outside world would be like. However, after they passed through the first town, they were greatly disappointed. Although there are many prosperous commercial towns like Tanzaku Street in the Land of Fire, there are more ordinary towns and villages, and their construction is naturally not as good as Konoha, which serves as a military base. Moreover, nobles nowadays mostly travel by human-powered palanquins or carriages. High technology like trains will not appear for many years. In less than a day, Hinata and Shino Aburame lost their expectations and focused on the mission. Ninjas move very quickly. If they travel at full speed, it takes about 3 days to get from Konoha in the Land of Fire to Sand Village in the Land of Wind. In just over a week, they can reach the most remote places in the shinobi world. But that's for ninjas. If there are ordinary people in the team, it depends on their speed of movement. The mining team consisted of a dozen people and 2 carriages. There were no goods on the return trip, so the speed was much faster than walking. Even so, the team stopped and started, taking 8 days to leave the Land of Fire. Hinata, what's the situation around us? Just after leaving the territory of the Land of Fire and changing from a forest road to a mountain road, Kurenai Yuhi asked Hinata, who had activated her Byakugan, with veins bulging on both temples. There is no danger within a 20-kilometer radius. Nani? Hinata clearly gave a safe answer, but almost shocked Kurenai Yuhi and Shino Aburame. There was no way, they were both frightened by Hinata's data. Subscribe to Chinese Novel Audiobook YouTube channel. Chapter 36, Hinata's Growth, Ready-Made Puppet. As everyone knows, the Hyuga clan's Byakugan can see things within a 1-kilometer radius. This range isn't the limit, it's what they can achieve just by opening the Byakugan. Afterward, they can further enhance their farsighted range by developing the Byakugan. However, no matter how much they develop it, the Hyuga clan's Byakugan can only see a range of a few kilometers to a dozen kilometers. This is the information compiled by various forces during the Third Shinobi World War. If Hiyashi Hyuga had said this, Kurenai Yuhi wouldn't be surprised. As the head of the clan, it wouldn't be strange for him to break through the limits of the information. But how old is Hinata? She just graduated a little over a month ago, and her Byakugan can see things within a 20-kilometer radius. What kind of monster is she? She's broken through the Hyuga clan's limit, hasn't she? Taking in the changes in their expressions, Izayoi chuckled inwardly. Not to mention them, even Hiyashi Hyuga was shocked by Hinata's growth. Izayoi, who possesses the Otsutsuki Bloodline, Red, and Hinata, the princess of the Byakugan, Red, are a match made in heaven. Izayoi revealing Hinata's perk is equivalent to transplanting Hinata's eyes. With the help of the Seiji, Red, acceleration cheat, he has now completed the first fetal movement. Hinata, whose bloodline hasn't reached the red level, only needs to absorb Izayoi's chakra to stimulate her potential and increase her upper limit. Starting from Konoha year 58, Hinata and Hanabi began to defy fate. Because in that year, Izayoi awakened the Uzumaki bloodline's unique ability physical stamina healing. Every day after training, regardless of whether they were injured or not, Izayoi would let Hinata and Hanabi bite him to absorb his chakra. The chakra that was absorbed not only restored Hinata and Hanabi's injuries but also stimulated their potential. Hinata has the highest Byakugan purity, so her changes are the most obvious. At only 12 years old, her Byakugan's farsighted range has surpassed Hiyashi Hyuga's. At this rate, by the time Shippuden starts, Hinata's bloodline limit Byakugan might upgrade from purple to gold. Is something wrong? Hinata tilted her head cutely, wondering why Kurenai Yuhi and Shino Aburame were so surprised. Kurenai Yuhi calmed her emotions and solemnly instructed, Hinata, don't reveal your farsighted range in the future, or many people will target you. A main family young lady whose Byakugan isn't bound by the caged bird seal and can see things within a 20-kilometer radius. The value and threat of such a person, once known by other ninja villages, would definitely put Hinata on the black market in various ninja villages, assassination lists. Yes, although she didn't know why Kurenai Yuhi said this, Hinata still nodded solemnly. This range is too reassuring, I'll leave the rest of the journey to you, Kurenai Yuhi said with a smile, patting Hinata's head. Shino Aburame also silently recalled the insects he had sent out. In the face of such a range of farsight and clairvoyance, the insects' scent perception is not worth mentioning at all. So, for the rest of the journey, Hinata would activate her Byakugan every so often to observe the movements within a 20-kilometer radius. Another 2 days passed like this. In these 2 days, 8th Squad eliminated 2 groups of mountain bandits and scared 1 group away. Due to the steep mountain roads, the route was difficult to change. The mountain bandits and rogue ninja who had a clear understanding of the terrain would specifically lie in ambush at the necessary passages, so they either had to take a detour to avoid them, or they could only eliminate them. Mountain bandits and rogue ninja generally wouldn't provoke convoys escorted by ninja. But there were also some who didn't believe in it and some who were ignorant, choosing to take a gamble. The 2 groups of mountain bandits that were eliminated were the latter. 8th Squad naturally killed these fools without hesitation. It was 8th Squad's first time killing someone, and they only felt slightly uncomfortable before quickly recovering. The school taught how to break genjutsu, and the teacher also cast genjutsu on the whole class, showing them bloody scenes. Perhaps there are still many people who cannot adapt. But Izayoi and the other 2 top students had already overcome this level of fear. On this day, after walking a few more miles, Hinata activated her Byakugan as usual, preparing to observe the situation within a 20-kilometer radius. Just then, as if she had seen something incredible, her expression changed drastically, and she subconsciously said, "Everyone, stop quickly." Hearing this, the convoy, which could only walk on foot while leading their horses due to the steep mountain road, stopped immediately. Kurenai Yuhi's expression became serious as she asked, Hinata, did you discover something? Yes. Hinata nodded quickly, her expression even a little panicked and incredulous. About 17 kilometers ahead, there are 2 mysterious people, their chakra is very strong, much stronger than teacher Kurenai, much stronger. Speaking of the end, Hinata didn't know how to describe it, so she could only tell everyone about the danger of the 2 mysterious people by belittling Kurenai Yuhi. Kurenai Yuhi didn't feel displeased, but quickly asked, what are the characteristics of those 2 people? They are wearing jumpsuits and straw hats. One person looks like a scorpion, and the other is standing on a bird, flying at low altitude, as if looking for something, Hinata said. Kurenai Yuhi's expression changed suddenly, and she said to Mr. Nishimura and the others, turn around immediately, change the route, there are S-rank missing nin ahead. Quick, turn around quickly. Mr. Nishimura immediately urged loudly, obviously knowing what S-rank missing nin meant. So they are S-rank missing nin. Hinata realized slightly. Izayoi didn't speak, but in his blue pupils, a white flower pattern appeared at some point. His gaze penetrated the mountains and came to a place about 17 kilometers ahead. One tall and one short figure, one in the sky and one on the ground, immediately appeared in his field of vision. These two people were the S-ranked missing nin that Kurenai Yuhi mentioned, and also members of the Akatsuki Sasori of the Red Sand and Deidara. Why are these two guys here? What are they looking for? Looking at Deidara riding a clay bird, searching around, Izayoi thought to himself. Immediately, his gaze fell on Sasori of the Red Sand, who was hiding in Hirako, and suddenly a flash of inspiration struck him. If he wants to use the Tenseigen to wirelessly control puppets, the prerequisite is that he must learn to make puppets. If he wants to make puppets, he needs to buy materials, and he needs money. Aren't there ready-made puppets right now? So he turned around and changed his route. After walking for a few minutes, Izayoi left the team on the pretext of going to the toilet. When he came back, it was just a shadow clone with a huge amount of chakra. As for the main body, it rushed towards Sasori of the Red Sand and Deidara at an extremely fast speed. Hinata, as if discovering something, inadvertently glanced at Izayoi's shadow clone. The shadow clone, noticing her gaze, shook his head. Hinata immediately returned to normal, pretending she hadn't seen anything. Seeing Izayoi rushing towards those two S-rank missing nin, Hinata didn't feel worried. Because in her Byakugan's perspective, Izayoi was now sometimes using body flicker to fly, and sometimes flying through layers of obstacles. Having experienced the power of attraction and repulsion, Hinata didn't think that the clay bird could withstand the attack of repulsion. As long as Izayoi wants to run, no one can stop him. Chapter 37, New Move, Izayoi's Greeting Gift. Sasori, we've been searching for 3 days and still haven't found the mining village. Is your information fake? At this moment, the art duo was unaware that they were being watched. Deidara circled in the sky a few times, and after still finding nothing, he couldn't help but come down to complain. The information was provided by Zetsu, so it shouldn't be wrong. A Black Hoe clan has recently emerged in the Land of Rivers, specializing in selling various minerals on the black market. Sasori of the Red Sand's voice sounded somewhat heavy and hoarse. That clan must have a huge source of minerals. As long as we find them, we won't have to put up with Kakuzu's attitude, and we won't have to carry out tasks everywhere in the future. Okay, then I'll accompany you to search for a few more days. Deidara said helplessly. After speaking, Deidara took Sasori of the Red Sand and flew into the sky, preparing to change to another area. Just as they were flying in the sky, a small shadow suddenly enveloped their figures, helping them block the sunlight in the sky. Looking up, the two saw a figure with dazzling golden light flashing behind them, making it impossible to see their face clearly. A flying ninja, Deidara exclaimed. Could it be that the old man sent someone to catch me back? The most famous flying ninjutsu is the earth release, lightweight rock technique of the Hidden Stone Village. Sasori of the Red Sand seemed to have discovered something and quickly urged, he's not an Iwa nin, Deidara, land quickly. At the same time, his mouth opened wide into a rectangle, shooting ultra-high-density poison needles at the figure in the sky, like a barrage. The poison needles were very fast, and before Deidara could react, they were about to submerge the figure from bottom to top. But the next second, these hundreds of thousands of poison needles seemed to hit an air wall and were all bounced back. The rain of needles fell like a torrential downpour. Seeing this scene, Deidara quickly controlled the white clay bird to descend, while waving his sleeves and throwing out several origami-sized white clay birds, flapping their wings and flying into the sky. Explode. Deidara formed an unformed seal with his other hand and whispered. Boom. Several overlapping explosions sounded, and the dazzling flames bloomed in the sky like fireworks. It's a pity that it's still daytime, and the fireworks are less beautiful. A gust of wind dispersed the smoke in the sky, and Deidara and Sasori of the Red Sand, who had escaped the shadow's coverage, finally saw the appearance of the figure. It was a man about 1.8 meters tall, wearing a black jumpsuit robe, with a pure white mask on his face that was the same color as his hair and had no eye holes, exuding a mysterious aura. This person was naturally Izayoi, who had used the transformation technique. Looking down at Deidara and Sasori of the Red Sand below, Izayoi murmured, let's start with a greeting. After speaking, he raised his right hand, palm facing the sky. A wisp of chakra flame condensed and appeared, and then disappeared again. Forget it, this technique is not yet complete, it's too embarrassing to use it as a greeting gift. Let's try a new move. With my current amount of chakra, I should be able to do it. Izayoi formed an unformed seal with both hands, and blue chakra flames immediately surged from his body. An invisible airflow rose upwards, causing his long white hair to flutter continuously. Izayoi maintained this hand seal for more than half a minute, during which the chakra flames never disappeared. Seeing this scene, Deidara, who had landed on a slope, said, "What is he doing? He should be performing a ninjutsu. Be careful, none of the ninjas who can fly on their own are simple characters." Sasori of the Red Sand said in a deep voice, while taking out a scroll from his body, preparing to release his puppet army. But soon, his movement stopped. And Deidara, who was looking up at the sky next to him, opened his mouth wide, revealing a dumbfounded expression. Izayoi in the sky was waving at them, greeting from far to near, "If you can survive, let's be friends." After speaking, he flew away. It was now noon, and the sun hung high in the sky, like a huge fireball. Whether it was an illusion or not, the height of this fireball was decreasing, approaching Deidara and Sasori of the Red Sand. What is that? The scene shifted to 8th Squad and the convoy, who were taking a detour and climbing a high slope, and they all stopped at the same time. They all looked at the sky above the art duo, revealing dumbfounded expressions. Some timid ordinary people were so frightened that they collapsed on the ground. A meteor. No, that's a meteorite. That's right, the huge fireball was actually a meteorite falling at high speed, and the friction with the atmosphere produced flames, burning into a large fireball. Looking at the direction of the meteorite's descent, Kurenai Yuhi murmured, "Is it a coincidence? It must be a coincidence. After all, how could there be a ninjutsu in this world that summons meteorites?" But she didn't notice that Hinata behind her was looking at the meteorite in the sky with adoring eyes. "Deidara, run quickly." The scene returned to the art duo. Sasori of the Red Sand shouted quickly. So cool. However, Deidara stood there, staring blankly at the meteorite in the sky, as if he could already see the gorgeous scene after the meteorite landed. "This is art." "Idiot." Sasori of the Red Sand cursed angrily. A huge iron tail stretched out from his back, tied up Deidara, and jumped off the slope. At the same time, he also took out a scroll from his body and released the trump card stored inside. With a pung sound, the white mist dissipated. A human puppet wearing a black jumpsuit robe, with skin made of human skin, but bones and internal organs incorporating puppet materials, appeared next to Sasori of the Red Sand. This human puppet was none other than the third cage. With chakra threads connected to the human puppet, the third cage opened his hands, and countless black iron sand immediately surged out from his sleeves, forming a huge triangular pyramid in the air below. Sasori of the Red Sand took Deidara and landed on the triangular pyramid, then manipulated the third cage to use magnet release to shoot the triangular pyramid towards another mountain, and used chakra threads to pull the third cage over, flying around the mountain wall, preparing to fly to the back of the other mountain. However, the speed of the meteorite's descent was too fast, and there was not enough time at all. Therefore, Sasori of the Red Sand had no choice but to change his mind, letting the third cage manipulate the triangular pyramid to shoot diagonally downwards, blasting a man-made cave in the mountain. Sasori of the Red Sand took Deidara and the third cage into it, first manipulating the iron sand to form a solid wall, sealing the entrance of the cave. Then, he created a large amount of iron sand, wrapping them layer by layer, forming a large black ball. Boom! Almost at the moment the black ball was formed, a deafening explosion resounded throughout the mountains. The explosion of the meteorite hitting the earth was amplified by the echoes in the valley, instantly penetrating the walls formed by the iron sand, depriving Sasori of the Red Sand and Deidara, and even all the animals in this area, of their hearing. The terrifying heat shockwave also killed a large number of creatures and plants, and instantly destroyed the mountain at the landing point. The shockwave crazily hit the surrounding mountains, and the mountain walls shattered. Even 10 or 20 kilometers away, the 8th Squad and the convoy on the slope could hear the sound of the explosion and see a huge mushroom cloud rising in the distance. Even with mountains blocking it, they could feel the ground beneath their feet trembling slightly. They were standing on the slope, which meant that the mountain was shaking slightly. From this, it could be seen how powerful the big fireball was. Chapter 38, Gift from a Good Friend. Since the meteorite was in a burning state, its volume was completely incomparable to Madara Uchiha's heavenly obstacle shock star, and it was only slightly larger than a tailed beast ball when it landed. The range of the mushroom cloud was also not as large as the impact of two heavenly obstacle shock stars. However, the high-temperature shock wave generated by the meteorite explosion was more lethal than the heavenly obstacle shock star, and its power was not inferior to the tailed beast ball, which was an energy body explosion. When the mushroom cloud dissipated, the mountain where Sasori of the Red Sand and Deidara were previously located had been blasted away. The mountain where they were hiding was much larger than the surrounding hills, so only a small part of it was blasted away. A huge meteorite crater appeared in the mountain range. All that remained in place were countless rubble, high-temperature scorching, and molten fragments of the meteorite. Art, this is simply art. As soon as the shaking stopped, Deidara, who was unharmed under the layers of protection of the mountain and the iron ball, came out of the black ball, created a clay bird, and flew in the air to look at the scene below. His expression was fanatical, wishing he could self-detonate on the spot to compete with Izayoi. "Idiot, come down quickly." Sasori of the Red Sand's reprimanding voice came from below. "Not bad, you actually survived unscathed." At this moment, a strange voice entered the ears of the two. Izayoi's figure appeared above Deidara again at some point. Hearing this voice, Deidara immediately looked up with a surprised expression, and asked nonsensically, "Hey, do you also think that the beauty of a moment is the real art? Are you talking about explosions?" Unlike those who didn't understand or disdained it, Izayoi nodded and replied very seriously, "Explosions are indeed very beautiful, and they are a powerful beauty, the stronger the more beautiful. The reason why tailed beasts and Jinchuriki are frightening is because they can use the amazing tailed beast ball of explosion." "Right, right," Deidara shouted excitedly. "As expected, explosion is art. Sasori, my art has been recognized." "Idiot, that guy is the enemy." Sasori of the Red Sand reprimanded again, while not forgetting to affirm his own art. "Also, eternal beauty is the real art. No, it's the beauty of a moment. It's eternal beauty." Quote. For a time, the two quarreled in the sky and on the ground. Izayoi didn't disturb them, but instead folded his arms and watched this scene with interest. I'm not talking to you anymore." In the end, Deidara, who was only 16 years old this year, ended the quarrel impatiently. He first turned his head and snorted, then looked at Izayoi and said enthusiastically, "Little brother, you understand art so well, do you want to join our organization?" It was rare to find someone with similar interests, and Deidara really wanted to recruit Izayoi. "Oh, what kind of organization are you?" Izayoi asked with a playful smile. "We are." Deidara was about to answer when he heard Sasori of the Red Sand's reprimanding voice, "Shut up. Deidara, do you want to die?" Hearing this, Deidara seemed to remember something and had to stop himself from continuing. However, he still said to Izayoi, "Buddy, if you join us, I'll tell you. Joining your organization is out of the question, but being friends is fine." Izayoi looked at Sasori of the Red Sand below and said, "You already gave me a greeting gift. As a return gift, can you give me your puppet technique and the method of making human puppets? Is that why you came looking for me?" Sasori of the Red Sand said in a deep voice, but he felt a hint of secret pleasure in his heart. It seems that this guy understands art quite well. But he's a bit of a playboy, clearly liking his eternal art, yet giving Deidara's explosion art such high praise. That's right. Izayoi, of course, didn't know what Sasori of the Red Sand was thinking. He nodded, ready to act at any time. "Buddy, what do you want Scorpion's puppet technique for? Those things are not art at all. Why not learn explosion release from me?" Deidara said. As soon as Deidara finished speaking, Sasori of the Red Sand's voice rang out, "Okay, I'll give it to you." A question mark couldn't help but appear on Izayoi's forehead under the mask. "So easy. With such a serious look, I thought he wouldn't be willing and we'd have to fight." Suddenly, Izayoi seemed to remember something, and his heart suddenly dawned. "I almost forgot, Sasori of the Red Sand's main body has also become a human puppet." "Then thank you." Izayoi was very happy to get what he wanted so easily. Izayoi's original idea was to kill Sasori of the Red Sand, then confiscate his inheritance, and even turn him into a member of the wireless puppet army. However, while admiring the explosion just now, he took a look at the perks on Sasori of the Red Sand, and Izayoi dismissed the idea. Puppet Master purple. Cage level aptitude purple. Chakra control purple. In this world where there is no hope of surpassing cage level without being related to the Otsutsuki clan, even if you can obtain power beyond cage level, you have to pay the price of your life. Purple perks are the highest level perks that all geniuses can possess. And purple perks are the standard for cage level. In this era, there are too few cage level powerhouses. Even fewer cage-level powerhouses have 3 purple perks like Sasori of the Red Sand. Deidara next to him only has 2 purple perks, Bloodline Limit Explosion Release purple and Cage-level Aptitude purple. However, no one is born a puppet master, at most, they are just a genius blue like Izayoi. The newest novels are first published at 69 Shu. Sasori of the Red Sand obviously transformed himself into a human puppet to defy fate, turning a puppet genius blue into a puppet master purple. It's such a pity to kill such a talent. He should be repeatedly fleeced like Sasuke Uchiha. When Izayoi's Tenseigen completes its final evolution, if he wants to go further, he must upgrade his Otsutsuki Bloodline, which requires a massive amount of points. A purple perk can be decomposed into a random 4-digit number of points. Since they didn't die from the initial greeting, Izayoi doesn't mind letting them off the hook. Although if pushed too hard, Deidara's C4 Garuda and C0 self-detonation could pose a threat to Izayoi. However, their strength has not reached the super cage level. If they are not super cage level fighters, then they still fall into the category of, a ninja's battle is a battle of information. As a transmigrator, Izayoi knows too much about their information. On the other hand, the two of them know nothing about Izayoi. Perhaps this is why Sasori of the Red Sand agreed so readily. Otherwise, if a passerby ran out and wanted him to hand over the puppet technique and the manufacturing method of human puppets, if Sasori of the Red Sand was in a good mood, he would reward him by turning him into a member of the puppet army. If he was in a bad mood, it would be a poisonous needle or a tail slap to death, and then his corpse would be exposed in the wilderness. Here are the things for you. Sasori of the Red Sand took out 3 scrolls, wrapped them with his iron tail, and threw them towards Deidara in the sky. As for why he didn't throw them at Izayoi, it was naturally because he was too high up. Before Deidara could descend to catch them, Izayoi opened his palm. An invisible gravitational force immediately stopped the flying scrolls, and then they slowly floated in the air. This is almighty pull. Seeing this scene, both Deidara and Sasori of the Red Sand's main body changed their expressions and looked at Izayoi in astonishment. The silly Deidara even tentatively asked, "Leader." What an idiot. Sasori of the Red Sand's heart was filled with helplessness. As expected, Izayoi said with interest, "Almighty pull. A good name for a move. Does your leader also use gravity?" Crap. Deidara hurriedly covered his mouth, realizing he had achieved his goal of snitching on himself. The scroll didn't fly to Izayoi's face but stopped in the air a dozen meters away. Izayoi lightly swiped his finger, and the scroll opened automatically. Seeing that no poisonous gas was ejected, Izayoi used the Tenseigen's farsight to look at it with peace of mind. After only a few glances, Izayoi nodded and sucked the scroll over. Then, looking down at Deidara and Sasori of the Red Sand below, he waved goodbye and said, "Thanks for the gift. Goodbye for now, my friends." After saying that, Izayoi flew away. Watching his departing figure, Sasori of the Red Sand, who had been prepared for the other party to turn hostile and engage in a deadly battle, breathed a sigh of relief. Having witnessed the other party's flight in Meteor, Sasori of the Red Sand was certain that this was a type that countered him. If it weren't for Deidara's presence, he would have taken advantage of the smoke and run away long ago. Seeing the other party use the leader's ability, Sasori of the Red Sand recalled the scene of the poison needles being bounced off earlier, and he felt an even greater sense of despair that he couldn't win. Fortunately, the other party had no intention to kill. But this feeling of being robbed on the road and almost killed was really frustrating. Chapter 39, Puppet Master, Izayoi's Excitement. As expected of the ultimate eye technique whose final form can control the trajectory of planets, just the first stirrings of it are enough to use attraction to pull meteorites from outer space. Even if that technique isn't complete, I still have a strategic deterrent trump card. After flying for a while, Izayoi descended from the sky, flashing through the trees while musing to himself. The power of the Tenseigen exceeded Izayoi's imagination. Moreover, unlike the Rinnegan, which possesses exclusive eye techniques and controls the rules of life and death, the Tenseigen's power is more evident in destruction. Attraction and repulsion are already this strong. I really look forward to unlocking the Tenseigen chakra mode. Since the shadow clone doesn't have a suitable reason to leave yet, Izayoi wasn't in a hurry to return to the team. Instead, after returning to a certain range, he took out the scroll gifted by his good friend and began to read it. He had only glanced at it briefly earlier, confirming its authenticity before putting it away. Now, Izayoi was reading it carefully. The scroll he was reading wasn't about puppet technique, that stuff was simply trash to Izayoi, who could control puppets wirelessly. Izayoi was looking at the method of creating human puppets. So that's how Kekkei Genkai and ninjutsu are preserved. This guy is really a genius. After reading for a while, Izayoi couldn't help but exclaim, no wonder his perk as puppet master purple. This kind of chakra core has already surpassed his predecessors, even the Otsutsuki clan's puppet technique on the moon is far inferior to him. After saying that, Izayoi flipped through another scroll, which recorded the method of manufacturing the chakra core for human puppets. The chakra core is the most important core of a puppet. Simply using chakra threads to control a puppet is just playing with a sock puppet. Powerful puppets also have a large number of mechanisms and hidden weapons installed inside, and can even use the power of the 5 elements. These functions cannot be opened with chakra threads. It is necessary to install a chakra core in the puppet and input chakra into the puppet through chakra threads to use various abilities at will. How powerful a puppet is depends entirely on what the person who made it installed in its body. Sasori of the Red Sand has blazed a trail that belongs to him. Instead of using materials to make puppets, he injected materials into the human body, turning human corpses into puppets. Then, he modified the puppet's heart, that is, the chakra core, so that the human puppet could use the Kekkei Genkai and ninjutsu from its lifetime. This is simply a new school of puppetry. As the founder, Sasori of the Red Sand indeed fits the system's evaluation of him puppet master purple. In Izayoi's eyes, Sasori of the Red Sand's human puppets are more suitable for him than the Otsutsuki clan's puppets on the moon. Wait. Suddenly, Izayoi had a flash of inspiration, and said excitedly, maybe I can upgrade the human puppet again. Sasori of the Red Sand's human puppets have something in common with Nagato's 6 Paths of Pain. In the original 4th Shinobi World War, Obito Uchiha turned the Jinchuriki into 6 Paths clones, all of whom could use the tailed beast's chakra and their abilities from their lifetimes. This means that the 6 Paths clones, like human puppets, can retain the abilities they had when they were alive. The only difference is that human puppets require chakra threads to control them, and the 6 Paths of Pain cannot stray too far from the outer path, or they will lose their signal. However, the Tenseigan can compensate for both of these shortcomings. With the Tenseigan's wireless puppet, as long as the puppet is within the range of farsight and the chakra core still has chakra, it can be manipulated at will. Even in the space passage connecting the moon and the earth, the puppet can still receive signals. If such a puppet could also use Kekkei Genkai and ninjutsu, and could replenish chakra remotely, wouldn't it be equivalent to an impure world reincarnation army with an immortal body, or a legion-style pain army? The more Izayoi thought about it, the more feasible it seemed. However, he has not yet unlocked yin-yang release and cannot fuse the 3. But he can first create a large number of puppets, and when he unlocks yin-yang release, he can directly insert the yin-yang release, black rod into them to upgrade them. In the evening, Izayoi returned to the team smoothly. Except for Hinata, 8th Squad and the convoy did not expect that the huge meteorite was actually summoned by Izayoi. 8th Squad and the convoy, deliberately taking a detour to avoid the art duo, spent 3 more days to reach their destination. During this time, they also avoided a mountain village, which also had a chakra stronger than Kurenai Yuhi's. Mr. Nishimura and the others lived in a remote mountain village. Such mountain villages are common in the land of rivers. However, villages like this that discover mineral sources and know how to mine and sell them are very rare in the land of rivers. This makes Mr. Nishimura all the more valuable. Due to the poor conditions in the mountain village, and the fact that they arrived at noon, Kurenai Yuhi refused Mr. Nishimura's invitation, took out the mission scroll, had him sign it, gave him a good review, and took 8th Squad back. Unlike walking when they came, 8th Squad used body flicker to leap back, each leap covering several meters, or even more than 10 meters. At this speed, it would take at most 2 days to return to Konoha. This is the difference between ninjas and ordinary people. In this technologically abstract world, ninjas are also versatile tools, the best cattle and horses. This is the first time you've carried out a C-rank mission, tell me your feelings. The newest novels are first published at. When they were tired of using body flicker, they would come down and walk. Kurenai Yuhi looked at Izayoi and the other 2 and asked. Very tired. Izayoi said truthfully, at first, there was a little novelty, but after that, it was physical and mental torture. Hinata and Shino Aburame nodded in agreement. Escort missions are like this, not only are they boring and a waste of time, but the rewards are pitifully small. Kurenai Yuhi smiled, but our mission is quite special. The land of rivers is already densely forested and has rugged terrain, and we almost encountered an S-rank missing nin in a mysterious powerhouse. Few C-rank missions are as unlucky as ours. Fortunately, we have Hinata's Byakugan, otherwise our trip would have been dangerous. In the end, Kurenai Yuhi reached out and touched Hinata's head. Hinata softly said, "This is what I should do." Good girl, that Izayoi got lucky. Kurenai Yuhi decided to give Hinata a hand. Little did she know, both Hinata and Izayoi had their own plans. The two only smiled and remained silent, ignoring Kurenai Yuhi's assist. 2 days later, in the afternoon, 8th Squad finally returned to Konoha. This C-rank mission took them exactly half a month. For their hard work over the past half month, each of them received an extremely high reward. 23,000 ryo. This reward was indeed extremely high for a C-rank mission. Because the village would deduct a portion, and the supervising Jonin would take a portion, the remaining reward would be divided into 3. The fact that there were still 23,000 ryo left meant that the reward for this C-rank mission should have been over 100,000. The rewards for C-rank missions were generally between 30,000 and 100,000. Being able to get over 100,000 ryo made the time spent seem reasonable. But if they had a choice, 8th Squad really wouldn't want to carry out this C-rank mission. Seeming to see their exhaustion, Kurenai Yuhi smiled and said, "I'll give you 3 days off. Go home and get some rest." Yes. 8th Squad disbanded on the spot. "See you tomorrow, Izayoi-kun." Hinata, who was also somewhat mentally exhausted, also unusually didn't go to Izayoi's house. Having only taken a few baths in the wild, she now only wanted to go home, take a bath, get some sleep, and then appear in front of Izayoi in her best condition. Izayoi, who couldn't even be helped by physical stamina healing, could only use special methods to heal Hinata. Izayoi suddenly lowered his head and kissed Hinata's forehead, waving his hand and smiling, "Go back and get a good night's sleep. See you tomorrow." After saying that, Izayoi disappeared in a body flicker technique asterisk. Hinata froze for a few seconds, then quickly looked around. After meeting a playful female gaze, her neck and cheeks instantly flushed red from the bottom up, and she ran away with steam coming from her head. Chapter 40, Little Pig, Farewell. Izayoi returned home, but he didn't immediately cook or take a shower. He walked into his room and came out holding a locked box. Judging from Izayoi's serious expression, this box must contain something very precious. Even the key to the lock was hidden in a secret compartment in the living room. Opening the box, inside was not a scroll or a weapon, but a red ceramic piggy bank. Little pig, farewell. Izayoi hugged the piggy bank, his hands and voice trembling slightly, his expression sorrowful. After saying that, he turned his head away, closed his eyes, and smashed the piggy bank hard on the ground. The ceramic piggy bank instantly shattered into pieces, revealing coins all over the floor. Izayoi squatted down, picking up each coin and bill, just like he had been stuffing them into the piggy bank since he was a child. This money was all saved by Izayoi from his monthly pension and the rewards from performing D-rank missions during this time. As for the inheritance left by his parents, it had long been used up. After all, he not only had to support himself, but also a big eater. If the village didn't have a monthly pension to help, which stopped being issued until he became a genin, Izayoi would have had to gnaw on tree bark and eat wild grass long ago. Using a bag to pack up the coins, Izayoi also threw the 23,000 ryo he had just received into it. Immediately, he left with the bag and came to a store. With a bang, Izayoi placed the bag heavily on the counter, pointing to something and saying, "Boss, there are 388,300 ryo in here. I want to buy a film camera, and exchange all the remaining money for film rolls and photo developing materials." "Okay, thank you for your patronage." The boss's enthusiastic voice immediately rang out. Before long, Izayoi walked out of the store with a camera in hand. "Finally got it, it's not too late." Izayoi fondled the camera with relish, smiling to himself, "Although it can't record my childhood memories with Hinata, it can record Hanabi's growth, it's worth it. I'm penniless now, and I probably can't eat the things in the refrigerator anymore, so I'll go hunting and grilling tonight. Older brother, wake up, the sun is shining on your butt." The next day, Izayoi, who suffered from sleep inertia, still enjoyed the princess's wake-up service. However, this time it was not the eldest princess who woke him up, but the little princess. His nose was a little itchy, Izayoi opened his eyes, and in his hazy vision, a delicate and lovely little face gradually became clear. Wearing a yellow-brown kimono, Hanabi straddled Izayoi's body, leaning over and holding her fringe braid, using her hair to sweep Izayoi's nose and face. "Naughty, next time when you fall asleep, older brother will do the same to you." Izayoi rubbed Hanabi's small face with a smile. Hee. Big sister told me to wake you up, older brother. Blame big sister if you're going to blame anyone. Hanabi immediately rubbed against Izayoi's palm, passing the buck. Go out first, older brother needs to wash up. Okay. After playing with Hanabi on the bed for a while, Izayoi patted her little butt, signaling her to get off the bed. Wearing white stockings, Hanabi jumped off the bed and ran out, no wonder there wasn't a sound. After a quick wash, Izayoi pulled open the desk drawer and took out the camera inside. Just as he walked out of the room, Izayoi immediately saw Hinata busy in the kitchen. At this moment, Hinata wasn't wearing her usual white trench coat and black pants, but a white kimono, with purple and white petal patterns on the belt, cuffs, and skirt. Her long black hair was styled into a bun at the back of her head. She had an apron tied around her waist, and a frying pan in her hand, skillfully tossing the food. And Hanabi was wrapping rice balls with seaweed at the dining table. Seeing this scene, Izayoi couldn't help but hold his breath, tiptoeing with the camera, looking for the most harmonious shooting angle with the light. With a click, a picture of the sister flowers, back to back, one standing, one kneeling, both wearing kimonos, each busy with their own things, was permanently preserved. Hearing the shutter sound of the camera, Hinata and Hanabi looked over. Camera. Looking at the camera in Izayoi's hand, Hanabi's beautiful eyes lit up. She took off her gloves and ran over, her expression surprised. Older brother, when did you buy this camera? Bought it yesterday. Older brother, let me see. Be careful, older brother spent 300,000 ryo on this, using up all his savings and the rewards earned from missions. Izayoi handed the camera over, reminding her. Hearing this, Hanabi vigorously wiped her hands on her expensive kimono, which could probably buy several cameras, before taking the camera. Older brother, how do you view the photos? The newest novels are first released here. They need to be developed. After breakfast, older brother will teach you how to develop photos. Okay. Older brother, let's take a picture too. No rush, after your sister finishes cooking, we'll take a picture together, that'll be more meaningful. Watching Izayoi and Hanabi playing around, Hinata had a happy smile on her face. When Hinata finished making breakfast, and Izayoi and Hanabi finished wrapping the rice balls together, the three of them sat at the dining table, holding seaweed rice balls, and took their first group photo with bright smiles. Izayoi sat in the middle, with the sister flowers on the left and right. The person in charge of taking the photo was Izayoi's shadow clone. A selfie stick. Nothing beats shadow clones. After breakfast, the three of them stayed in Izayoi's room, drew the blackout curtains, and began developing the photos. So pretty. Looking at the artistic photos of the sisters, Hanabi, unable to think of any other adjectives, could only exclaim in this way. Hinata, on the other hand, stared at the group photo of the three, her beautiful eyes shining. At this moment, the girl's thoughts were as regretful as Izayoi's. If only we had a camera when we were little, then we could have recorded the process of her and Izayoi growing up. But, it's not too late now. So, for the next day, Izayoi and the Hyuga sisters began taking photos everywhere. First at various places in the house, such as the living room, balcony, dojo, yard. Then they went outside, to the familiar abandoned training grounds, and some places with beautiful waterfalls, taking photos of individuals, pairs, and all three of them. When passing by a large tree, Hinata even took the initiative for once, tugging on the sleeve of the robe Izayoi had specially changed into, and asked with a blushing face, Izayoi-kun, can you use the transformation technique? Hearing this, Izayoi was slightly stunned. Then, following Hinata's gaze, Izayoi looked at the big tree, and then he realized, smiling and nodding, sure, let's do it together. Yes. Hinata nodded happily. After Izayoi cast the shadow clone technique, the two stood facing each other and made the hand seals in unison, transformation technique. The white smoke dissipated, and two children wearing ordinary clothes, with chubby faces, stood under the big tree, smiling at each other. Then the two looked at Izayoi's shadow clone, and both showed brilliant smiles. With a click, the scene was forever preserved. Thank you for watching. Continue exploring the fascinating world of Chinese novels with us. Hit that subscribe button on Chinese Novel Audiobook to stay updated with our latest stories. And never miss out on a great listen.